Hey guys, tonight we drift into the smoky streets of 1950s Brooklyn, where tenement walls sweat in July and the night air always tastes faintly of diesel, roast pork, and someone else's cigarette. Picture a boy, maybe 10, standing by a cracked window in a fourth-floor walk-up on Columbia Street. His nose is pressed to the dirty glass, one sock pulled halfway down, eyes darting between the parked Buicks below and a man arguing in front of a deli. Inside the apartment, his mother's humming fades beneath the crackling of something frying in a cast-iron pan. Outside, it's just another evening stitched together with shouting and the slow clack of high heels over concrete. That boy? He's Joe Gallo. You might know him better by the name the newspapers gave him, Crazy Joey. But the truth, as always, is messier. He wasn't crazy. At least not in the way they meant. You probably wouldn't survive this neighborhood. Not back then. Not with its unwritten rules, alley whispers, and the way someone could vanish between 9:12 and 9:14 p.m. without leaving behind so much as a cigarette butt. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Joey Gallo doesn't belong to quiet. Even as a child, he has this buzz inside him, like a fridge motor that won't shut off. He watches people with unsettling intensity, like he's taking notes for a play he hasn't written yet. The neighbors call him odd. His teachers call him gifted, then troubled, then absent. He's got an older brother who follows rules and a younger one who worships him. But Joey sees life as a performance, and he's determined to star in every scene. He's small, but wiry, with eyes that almost seem to smirk even when his mouth stays still. And he doesn't blink often. That gets noticed. His mother, Mary, says he was born wide-eyed. The doctor didn't even have to spank him. He just looked around and grinned like he was already in on the joke. The Gallo family lives in a 3-room apartment above a candy shop that occasionally sells more than just licorice. Their father, Umberto, everyone calls him Buster, runs numbers, but never anything loud. He's the type who keeps his head down, but his wallet folded wide open. If Joey learned anything from Buster, it's that silence buys safety, but style buys loyalty. One of the earliest memories Joey has, though whether it's memory or myth is unclear, involves a butcher knife, a dropped pork shoulder, and a man who dared insult his mother's accent. Joey's maybe 6. He doesn't remember how the knife got in his hand, or how close he came to slicing someone's shoe, but the man backed off. That, Joey remembers with exquisite clarity. It's easy to forget how cramped Brooklyn felt back then, before the espresso bars, before the brownstone conversions. It was brick and sweat, and radios turned too loud because insulation didn't exist. On Columbia Street, every family knew the other's business, who drank, who wandered, who'd gone upstate and might not be back. Joey learns to read people the way some kids read comics. He clocks posture, pace, pauses in speech. He mimics voices, invents aliases. His favorite pastime isn't stickball. It's convincing grown men he's someone else entirely, just to see how long he can hold the illusion. One afternoon, around the age of 10, he sits alone in the hallway with a sketch pad. On the page, he's drawn a tiger wearing a fedora, smoking a cigarette. The tiger's holding a violin case. No one asks why. No one wants to know. You see, this is the beginning. Not of violence, not yet, but of imagination. And for Joey, that's the real weapon. His room is filled with oddities. Paintings he started but never finished, paperback books with the covers peeled off, and a glass jar of marbles arranged by color and size. Every object tells a story, and Joey treats each one like a clue in a puzzle only he can solve. And then there's the lion. Yes, a real lion. Later, people will swear it's just a legend, but no, for a brief wild season, the Gallows actually keep a lion cub in their apartment. Buster claims it fell off a circus truck. Others say it was traded for a gambling debt. Joey names it Cleopatra, feeds it raw meat, and lets it sleep curled at the foot of his bed like it's a tabby. Cleopatra never roars. She purrs. Mostly, this lion becomes neighborhood lore. Kids whisper about it. Adults shake their heads. No one calls the cops. Why would they? The lion isn't the dangerous one. Years later, that lion will be a metaphor for danger behind charm, for the illusion of control, for Joey himself. Mainstream history likes its mobsters predictable. Men in suits, gruff voices, loyalty to a fault. Joey Gallo is none of that. He's a kaleidoscope with a switchblade. He starts small, of course, delivering packages, standing lookout, collecting small debts for bigger men. But he's never content with the margins. He wants the center stage, even if that means burning the stage down. And yet, for all his ambition, Joey is still a boy. He cries the day his mother cuts her hand peeling potatoes. He reads The Old Man and the Sea 3 times in 1 week because he likes how quiet it is. He draws portraits of gangsters with angel wings just to see how it feels. There's a moment, age 13, give or take, when he stares into a mirror and says aloud, "People will remember me." Not a question, a prophecy. And you know what? He's right. Many people still think that Joey's madness was exaggerated, press fodder designed to fit a nickname. So what do you think? Was it all performance, or was something quietly splintering beneath the charm? By the time he's 15, the streets already whisper his name like a dare. He walks like a man twice his size, nods at cops like they're doormen, and smiles that Brooklyn smile, half sweet, half warning. Just a boy, just a window, just a cracked view of the world that never fixed itself. But Joey? He already sees the angles. In the unyielding patchwork of Brooklyn brick and back alley grit, Joey Gallo doesn't quite grow up. He expands. It's not a process of aging, really. It's more like his personality folds out in jagged, colorful layers, like those pop-up books that startle you when you turn the page. By the time he's 16, he's no longer the quiet kid with the sketch pad. He's got swagger now, a slow, deliberate way of entering a room like it might owe him an apology. But he's still drawing, always sketching. Animals in suits, cops as fish, mobsters as twisted mythological figures. One of his favorites is a 3-eyed rooster wearing a judge's robe. Nobody knows what it means, but Joey grins every time he flips past that page. He gets kicked out of high school after socking a teacher who made fun of his last name. He doesn't regret it. In fact, he tells people the teacher learned more in that punch than he could ever teach in class. A joke, of course, but Joey always laces his jokes with sharp teeth. Instead of classrooms, he spends his days in the corners of neighborhood pool halls, absorbing street law and perfecting what he calls mirror conversation. That's when you learn to say the exact opposite of what you're thinking and still get what you want. He tests it on everyone: store clerks, postal workers, girls who ignore him until they don't. And it works. You see, Joey isn't just slick. He's persuasive in a way that makes you forget he's persuading you. His favorite line? Don't worry, I already thought about that. Delivered with a wink, it's both comforting and disorienting. How could someone so young sound like he's already survived 3 wars? Buster, his father, doesn't know what to do with him. The old man wanted Joey to keep his head down, stick to small numbers work, maybe run a club someday. But Joey? Joey wants to run the stage. He talks about turning Brooklyn into a chessboard where he picks all the pieces. Not the king, necessarily. No, Joey says he prefers being the bishop, moving in diagonals, unpredictable. There's a moment, a defining one, though small, where Joey finds a worn copy of Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra in a trash bin behind a used bookstore. He doesn't know the name, can barely pronounce the title, but he opens it anyway. Inside, he finds ideas that hum at the same frequency as his thoughts. Power, truth, the creation of self. He reads it 3 times that week, and then again. It becomes his gospel, even if he rarely talks about it. Soon, the streets begin to murmur that Joey Gallo isn't just another errand boy. He's sharp, too sharp. He quotes philosophy while shaking down loan defaulters. Tells a guy he's willfully denying the absurd condition of existence right before taking his watch. One old school capo calls him a kid with a library in his head and brass in his pockets. It's not meant as a compliment, but Joey smiles when he hears it. He earns his nickname early. Crazy Joey. Not because he screams or flips tables. No, that would be too simple. It's because of the way he stares at you when you're talking, like he already knows what you're going to say and is just waiting to see if you lie. That kind of crazy. And then there's the stunt with the pigeon. A local numbers runner tried to skim from a Gallo-connected account. Joey caught wind, and instead of the usual broken fingers, he delivered the man a box with a live pigeon inside. No note, just the bird. When the man opened it, the pigeon flew straight into his face and knocked his glasses clean off. Joey said nothing, but the message was clear. We know, and we're watching. It became known as the softest warning in Brooklyn. Joey's crew begins to form. Not an official crew yet, but the loyal gravity around him starts to congeal. First, there's Larry Gallo, his older brother, who operates more like an anchor than a spark. Then comes Albert, Kid Blast, wide-eyed and wordless but fast with a switchblade when needed. And beyond family, there's Mackie, a heavy-set pool shark who once took a bullet in the thigh and still beat his shooter with a cue stick. Joey surrounds himself with the clever, the quiet, the unconventional. Mainstream history will later say Joey was theatrical and unpredictable. But many people still think that these traits were precisely what made him so dangerous, because he didn't follow the usual mob script. So, what do you think? Was he a liability to tradition, or the future they couldn't understand? There's an early test. A debt collection gone wrong on Union Street. A man refuses to pay, claiming Joey's too young to be taken seriously. Joey listens, nods, and then calmly sets the man's shoes on fire while he's still wearing them. Just the laces, just enough to make a statement. And as the guy flails around trying to put them out, Joey says, "That was a demonstration. Next time we skip the warm-up." He doesn't laugh after he says it. He just leaves. From that point on, people start paying on time. Joey starts dressing different too. Long coats, even in spring. Always carrying a book, never reading it in public, but always there. Sartre, Capote, Kafka. One time someone catches him reading Moby Dick upside down and he says, The whale makes more sense this way. It becomes part of his myth. People start to wonder if he's playing a part or if the part is playing him. At night, he walks the neighborhood rooftops. Not for any reason, just because he says it's where ideas feel sharper. From up there, he watches the city glitter and flicker and imagines reshaping it one block at a time. He says, "If you start from the sky, the streets obey you." That phrase sticks with Mackie. He repeats it years later, after Joey's gone. Joey has yet to take a life. That moment waits on the horizon, but in every action, you can feel its shadow stretching forward. He's not just trying to rise, he's rehearsing for something bigger. He's sketching the role he wants the world to believe in. And when you sketch often enough, sometimes the lines stick. One evening, back in the Gallo apartment, Cleopatra the lion lets out a low, rumbling growl. She's grown restless. Joey sits beside her, petting her mane like it's the most natural thing in the world. His mother watches, horrified, but says nothing. "You ever feel like the world's asleep and you're the only one pacing the cage?" he asks her. She doesn't answer. He smirks. "That's okay. I'm used to talking to ghosts." The cage, of course, wasn't just for the lion. By the time Joey Gallo hits 18, he's already figured out that in Brooklyn, reputation doesn't walk, it drives. A rusted-out Cadillac with a busted muffler becomes his calling card, louder than necessary, gliding down Columbia Street like a parade float for a king nobody crowned. Inside that car rides the whisper of ambition. On the sidewalks, the old men in folding chairs pause their checkers, and the kids lean off stoops to see which version of Joey shows up today. The poet in a trench coat, or the storm with a smile. But Joey's rise doesn't happen in a vacuum. His father, Buster, runs small bets and shuffles envelopes quietly under the radar. He's cautious, methodical, nothing flashy, which in mob circles is a survival strategy. And though Buster's name carries a certain neighborhood weight, it's never traveled far beyond DeGraw or Union Street. Joey, on the other hand, has no interest in staying small. At home, the tension grows thick like dust on unused books. Buster warns him. "Quiet is how you stay breathing." Joey replies, "Then you've been breathing too long." Still, Joey watches, learns, absorbs. His father's routines, the way debts are recorded in code, the hand gestures passed between bookies like Morse code. But where Buster sees efficiency, Joey sees opportunity. Where Buster prefers the margins, Joey sketches blueprints for the headline. That winter, Joey begins running numbers himself, not for his father, but with his own twist. He adds poetry readings. That's not a metaphor. He actually hires a guy from Red Hook to read beatnik verse while the bets are taken. People show up just for the spectacle. Women who never placed a wager now slip him quarters wrapped in silk handkerchiefs, just to see what he'll say in return. "Your lucky number's 11, Joey tells one. "Same as the number of secrets your boyfriend keeps." She gasps. He winks. The cash flows. Word spreads. Fast. And not just among the neighborhood eccentrics. It makes its way to local bosses. The Profi family in particular. They're old school, quiet, devout. But they notice Joey and his strange charisma. And more importantly, they notice his results. One afternoon, a man in a beige overcoat and pressed slacks sits down beside Joey at Cafe Trieste. Doesn't introduce himself, doesn't need to. His gold pinky ring does all the talking. "You make noise," the man says. "I make music," Joey replies. The man sips espresso. "Music can get you killed." Joey shrugs. "So can silence. At least mine gets better tips." It's not a recruitment, not exactly. But it's the first overture. A signal. The mob's watching. They don't know what to do with him yet. But they've started assigning him adjectives. unpredictable, bright, reckless, useful. At night, Joey writes in a leather-bound notebook, not crimes, ideas. He draws plans for a better system, where loyalty isn't earned by fear, but by flair. He doodles symbols, dream sequences, codes that only he understands. One sketch shows a man with a gun for a heart, a halo overhead, and no eyes. His mother finds it and weeps. Still, she cooks him dinner, spaghetti with too much garlic. Joey doesn't complain. That spring, Cleopatra, the lion, gets too big for the apartment. The neighbors complain about the growling. Animal control is called twice. Joey finally gives her away to a shady zoo in Jersey. He visits once, sees her pacing behind steel bars, and never returns. The lion is gone, but the growl stays in his bones. Mainstream history sometimes paints Joey as a kid who spiraled, but many people still think that he wasn't spiraling. He was ascending, just on his own crooked staircase. So what do you think? Was he out of step, or simply dancing to a rhythm no one else could hear? Joey's circle tightens. His brothers are close now, especially Kid Blast, who's becoming more than just shadow muscle. They begin orchestrating small jobs together, protection gigs, truck heists, even a few lean extortion plays disguised as business consultations. The Gallo Crew, as they're unofficially called, develops a signature, leave behind something odd at the scene. A feather, a page from a philosophy book. Once a single red rose dipped in ink. It's confusing, poetic, and slightly unnerving, which is exactly the point. The old mob doesn't like it, but they can't argue with results. One night, in a cramped back room of a Bensonhurst bar, Joey's given a proposition. Work directly for the Profi family, keep the theatrics to a minimum, and rise through the expected channels. He listens, smiles, then asks, "What if I'm more interesting than expected?" They don't laugh, but they don't say no. And so it begins. His delicate tightrope walk between conformity and chaos. One job cements his early status. A rival runner named Benny Lukes starts muscling in on Gallo turf. Low stakes but symbolic. Joey doesn't send a warning. He sends a box with a broken mirror inside and a note that reads, "You're already in pieces. I'm just the box." Benny leaves Brooklyn within 48 hours. From that point on, even seasoned enforcers step lightly around Gallows Crew. Still, trouble brews. Joey's style might draw attention, but it also draws heat. Police begin asking quiet questions. Detectives loiter outside the cafe. One day, someone finds a tracking bug under Joey's Cadillac. He removes it, tapes it to a toy train, and sends it circling his apartment until it burns out. He tells the FBI, "If you wanted to know where I was going, you should have asked. I love an audience." But the best line comes later. When pressed about a suspected hijacking, he says, "I'd confess, but then I'd have to charge admission. The newspapers eat it up." Joey becomes a character before he's even a true criminal. He's theatrical, quotable, and utterly unpredictable, which makes him dangerous to enemies, to friends, to himself. But through it all, he keeps writing, keeps sketching. One drawing shows a puppet with scissors in its hands, cutting its own strings. No caption, just a date, tomorrow. The story most people tell, the one that ends up in half-baked documentaries and hurried books, is that Joey Gallo's lion was the wildest thing in his life. That's because they never visited the Gallo apartment on a Sunday evening in 1955. That was when the family hosted dinner with a side of chaos, and the living room would be packed shoulder to shoulder with neighborhood characters. Small-time crooks, loud cousins, political hopefuls, struggling musicians. If someone showed up with wine or a story, they were welcome. Joey, of course, held court, leaning against the wall, arms folded, always watching, and Cleopatra. The lion lounged nearby, tail flicking. No cage, no leash, just a vague trust in her sense of decorum. It was during one such dinner that a man named Bobby Rags Raguso, fresh out of Rikers and 2 whiskeys too deep, decided to test Joey's patience. Rags made some offhand joke about Buster being just a glorified bookie with a pet cat. The room froze. Even the lion seemed to go still. Joey didn't raise his voice. He didn't even stand. He just smiled and said, "Don't worry, Rags. Everyone wants to be remembered for something. Yours will be the time you said the wrong thing next to a lion." Nobody laughed. Rags left. No one saw him at Sunday dinners after that. Joey Gallo was never violent just for the sake of it. Not back then. He preferred fear administered with subtlety, like a violin note sliding beneath the surface of a film score. Violence to Joey was an exclamation point, but you didn't start every sentence shouting. That's why his next move wasn't a beating or a hit. It was a favor. Small. Strategic. A bakery on Court Street had been vandalized repeatedly. Spray paint, bricks through the window, that kind of thing. The owner was a gentle old Sicilian man who barely spoke English. Joey, out of nowhere, shows up with new glass and offers a friendship discount. Next morning, the bakery is spotless. Next week, the vandals vanish. No one knows how. But from then on, every loaf of bread Joey receives is still warm. That was his way. Build reputation not just with fear, but with usefulness. The Profi family began to take closer notice. Joe Proface, the olive oil king, was no fool. He valued tradition, control, and discretion. Gallo, with his smirks and sketches and lion stories, didn't fit the mold. But he also didn't cause problems. Yet. And in those days, being useful without being loud was rare, so Proface sent someone. Anthony Tony Skins Corallo, a mid-tier enforcer with a nose for talent. He approached Joey in the back of a jazz club where Joey liked to sketch between sets. "You're smart," Tony said, sitting down without invitation. "Too smart." Joey looked up from his sketchbook. "And that's a problem because smart men get ideas, and ideas get men killed." Joey nodded, still drawing. "Then I'll keep mine quiet, for now." Tony laughed. "You know what you are, kid? You're a lion with a leash in your own hands. And Joey?" He didn't deny it, just flipped the page and began sketching Tony. Only he gave him the head of a raven and a key between his teeth. But while Joey was collecting favors and forging a name, something darker was shifting in his own bloodline. Kid Blast, his youngest brother, was starting to drift. Not away from Joey, but deeper into his orbit. Albert had never been the thinker. He followed, fast and loyal. But now he was getting into fights over slights too small to notice. One incident involved a coat someone borrowed without asking. Another, a spilled drink. Joey watched closely. He knew that when someone stopped respecting small boundaries, bigger ones would fall soon after. So he pulled Albert aside one night and said, "You don't need to fight for my name. I already did that." Albert looked away. "I'm serious," Joey added, soft but sharp. "I don't need a soldier who forgets what war we're fighting." That was Joey, equal parts big brother and mob philosopher. And the truth? Joey was starting to wonder about the rules. Not just the mafia's rules, the ones written in blood and silence, but life's whole instruction manual. Who got to say what power looked like? Why did loyalty only go up the chain but never down? He shared some of this with Mackie one night on a rooftop. They sat with cheap wine and a shared cigarette, looking down at Brooklyn's blinking windows. "You ever think," Joey said, "that maybe we're just characters in someone else's story?" Mackie squinted. "Nah, I write my own." Joey chuckled. "You sure? What if someone's been holding the pen the whole time? You drunk?" "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of reading other people's scripts." It was this kind of talk that made Joey feel dangerous. Not because of the content, but because he meant it. Then came the pool hall incident. A quiet kid named Sal, 16, nervous, always a step too slow, was working at a local hall where Joey and his crew often played. One night, Joey noticed Sal was being harassed by a pair of off-duty cops. They weren't brutal, just cruel in that way authority sometimes gets when it thinks no one's watching. But Joey was watching. He waited until they left, then followed them out. Cornered them near a dumpster. No fists, no threats, just words. "I know your names," he said, smiling, "and I know your wives." Pause. "I'd hate for either of them to know what I know." The cops never came back. Sal, tearfully grateful, offered Joey free pool for life. Joey declined. "No strings, just don't forget who stood up when you were down." That was his version of morality. Slanted, sure, but it had rhythm. Many people still think that Joey's lion was a symbol of power, but others believe it was something else, a burden, a living metaphor for the danger he couldn't always control. So what do you think? Was Cleopatra his totem or his warning? Years later, a neighbor would recall hearing Joey recite lines of poetry on his fire escape at 2 a.m. They didn't understand the words, but the tone that they remembered. Soft, unsettled, like a prayer that had forgotten who it was praying to. In this chapter of his life, Joey isn't just surviving, he's sculpting, molding his image with clay made from theater, kindness, and low-key terror. Every act deliberate, every sentence tuned. He didn't just want to be feared, he wanted to be remembered. By now, Joey Gallo is no longer just a neighborhood eccentric with mob connections and a poetic streak. He's something else, something harder to name. He walks the streets like a man whose dreams cast longer shadows than his footsteps. Kids in Red Hook whisper about the time he stared down 2 armed men with nothing but a deck of playing cards. Teenagers imitate his walk. And old-timers, whether out of respect or dread, lower their voices when his name enters the conversation. Joey's officially on the Proface payroll now. Not in the books, of course, but known enough to be protected, and valuable enough to be watched. His job? Well, that's always ambiguous. He's a fixer, a collector, a liaison, someone you send when you need compliance wrapped in theater. But his real job, the one he's appointed himself to, is building a new kind of crew, one that doesn't obey tradition for tradition's sake, one that doesn't kneel to the rules written by men with soft hands and heavier crosses. He calls it the future. His first real act of rebellion doesn't look like rebellion at all. It looks like dinner. Joey books a table at a small restaurant on Atlantic Avenue. The place is quiet, mostly empty. He brings 4 men, not all Italians, not all from the same neighborhood. One of them is from Harlem, another from Bay Ridge. Each of them works a different angle. Protection, hijacking, gambling, numbers. This dinner, unremarkable to most, is Joey's opening salvo in what would later be called a philosophy of integration. Not in the civil rights sense, but in the criminal sense. He's mixing business circles that were, until then, hermetically sealed. He's not trying to be noble. He's trying to be effective, and it works. The man from Harlem, Teddy Cobb, introduces Joey to an entirely different market. Joey, in turn, teaches Teddy how to threaten a man using nothing but polite conversation and the lighting of a cigarette. The alliance is fragile, but it's real, and it's noticed. The Profi family, meanwhile, starts to grumble. Not loudly, not yet. But the whispers are there. Joey's ideas are too big. His moves too visible. He's gathering loyalty in ways that bypass the chain of command. Still, Joe Proface is a practical man. He's not a fan of Joey, but he respects results. So long as the money comes in and the streets remain relatively quiet, he tolerates the sideshows. But behind the scenes, others are less patient. In particular, Carmine Persico, young, ambitious, and deeply loyal to the old ways, begins to see Joey as a threat, not because he's rising too fast, but because he's not playing by the same rules. He says as much during a quiet dinner in Queens. You can't trust a man who dances with ghosts and doesn't flinch at mirrors. Joey, of course, knows they're watching. He welcomes it, uses it. He stages scenes, leaves crumbs. One night, he sits at the edge of the Carroll Street Bridge, tossing coins into the canal and muttering names under his breath. When someone asks what he's doing, he says, buying silence in advance. The next day, word spreads that Joey's doing rituals. It's absurd, and it's perfect, because fear in his hands is never crude. It's art. One job changes everything. It's supposed to be a simple truck hijacking. Textbook. The vehicle's carrying electronics, and Joey's crew intercepts it near Flatbush. Smooth. Clean. But the driver, a retired Marine, doesn't scare easy. He grabs a tire iron and gets in a swing before Mackie pins him. Joey steps in before it escalates. He kneels beside the bruised man, pats him on the back, and says, "You've got guts and bruised ribs." The man glares, bleeding from the lip. Joey smiles. "I'm going to let you go, because someday, someone's going to need your story." And then he does. No threats, no warnings, just a nod. The man, it turns out, has a brother in the press. Within weeks, there's a strange little column in a fringe paper. The Gentleman Hijacker of Flatbush. It doesn't name Joey, but it doesn't have to. The myth grows. That myth, however, begins to cast a shadow longer than even Joey intended. Kid Blast, now fully in Joey's orbit, starts making moves on his own. Quiet deals, unapproved collections, and worse, using Joey's name to intimidate when Joey isn't around. Joey pulls him aside again, this time less softly. "You want my name?" he asks. "Fine, but remember it has teeth. If you can't make it bite, don't make it bark." Albert nods, humbled, but the damage is done. Within the Profi family, the Gallo Crew is now seen as a wild card. Useful, yes. Profitable, absolutely. But unstable. Many people still think that Joey wanted to take over, that his ambition was about titles and hierarchy. But what if it wasn't? What if he just wanted to rewrite the script altogether? So what do you think? Was Joey climbing the ladder or planning to knock it over? There's a night, late September, when Joey walks alone down Union Street, wearing a long black coat and humming a Sinatra tune. The moon hangs low and yellow like a watchful eye. He stops by a mural of St. Michael, lights a cigarette, and says aloud, "Funny how angels are always armed." No one's there, or so he thinks. A young boy across the street, wide-eyed and sleepless, hears the line. He repeats it the next day at school. By the end of the week, half the neighborhood knows it. It becomes a whisper, another line in the legend. But legends draw attention. And in Joey's case, that attention comes with consequences. At a sit-down with mid-level capos, someone asks Joey if he plans to settle down and fit in better. It's not a question. It's a prompt. Joey replies, "Settle down? I'm not a snow globe gentleman." They don't laugh. Joey doesn't care. He's not here for applause. He's here for the long game. There's a peculiar kind of silence that falls over a city right before something ruptures. Not the kind born of peace, but of suspense, like everyone's waiting for the punchline to a joke that isn't funny. That's how Brooklyn feels by late 1956. The tension's thick, the streets too quiet, and Joey Gallo is whistling like he doesn't hear it. But he does. He always does. He's just choosing not to blink. Joey's reputation now extends far beyond Columbia Street. He's no longer the kid with sketches and strange metaphors. He's Crazy Joey in more than whispers. His crew is operating like a well-oiled machine. Small hijackings, protection rackets, even rumored links to union intimidation. But unlike the other crews, the Gallows do it with flair. Their victims remember the suits, the odd quotes, the unsettling calm with which threats are delivered. And most of all, they remember the smiles, because Joey never raises his voice. He raises eyebrows. At the heart of his growing success is one thing the old families undervalue: style. Joey understands that fear is temporary, but stories are forever. Every move he makes with an eye on the narrative. He doesn't just break a man's kneecaps. He leaves a calling card, a chess piece, a playing card. Once, he sends a music box playing La Vie en Rose to a man who owed him 30 grand. The guy pays within the hour. It isn't about cruelty. It's about control, and nothing controls people better than mystery. Meanwhile, the Profi family is changing. Joe Proface is aging, becoming more reclusive. His demands grow more rigid: tribute, attendance, loyalty. The Gallows grow restless. They don't like the iron grip, the way the profits flow upward, but the risk stays at street level. Joey voices this openly, too openly. At a backroom meeting near Bay Ridge, he tells a fellow crew leader, "This isn't a family. It's a vending machine. Put in loyalty. Watch nothing come out." The line spreads like fire. Quiet laughter behind hands. Uneasy glances. The idea that someone might challenge the hierarchy is dangerous enough. But the fact that it comes from someone as visible as Gallo, that's gasoline on a fuse. Still, Joey moves forward, unafraid, or at least unwilling to show fear. He begins to surround himself with thinkers, not just hitters, men who quote Camus, painters, philosophical bartenders. His apartment becomes a rotating salon of oddity, half headquarters, half beatnik speakeasy. There are meetings about numbers and territory, and then impromptu readings of Neruda. And yes, there's still a lion skull on the bookshelf, bleached clean. A reminder. One night, during one of these strange gatherings, someone suggests Joey's crew should go independent, form their own family, a Gallo faction. Joey doesn't dismiss the idea. He just says, "Why start a family when you can write a revolution?" The room goes silent, then a slow clap from the far corner. It's Kid Blast, and then comes the turning point. A shakedown gone too smooth. A small business owner in Queens, tired, sick, drowning in gambling debt, agrees to the Gallow Crew's offer of protection. Only, within hours of agreeing, the man is found in his shop, slumped over the counter, dead from a heart attack. No signs of trauma, no sign of robbery, but on his desk is a note, unsigned. "Don't worry, you're safe now." The police can't pin anything on anyone, but they start watching. And more importantly, so does the commission. The mafia's commission, the governing council of the 5 families, isn't exactly worried yet. But the whispers are rising. Gallo isn't just unpredictable. He's now a variable. And the commission doesn't like variables. Joey gets summoned to a quiet dinner, neutral territory. Carmine Persico is there. So is Joe Colombo, still young, but clearly being groomed. They don't threaten Joey. They probe him. "What do you want, Joey?" He grins. Isn't that the question everyone's too afraid to answer out loud? A pause. Columbo narrows his eyes. So answer it. Joey leans back, folds his arms, and says, I want a seat at a table that doesn't exist yet. No one responds. No one needs to. The air thickens. Back in Brooklyn, Joey senses the walls closing, so he shifts tactics. He becomes more generous, gives money to churches, throws cash at local festivals, donates anonymously to struggling musicians, even pays for a neighbor's daughter's surgery. He tells Mackie, you want to live long in this business? Make sure half the city owes you something they can't repay. Mackie replies, and the other half? Joey shrugs. Fear works on them. One peculiar moment from this period. Joey visits a fortune teller. No joke. An old woman on Atlantic Avenue who reads palms and smokes clove cigarettes. She looks at his hand and frowns. You're not long for peace, she says. He smirks. That's okay. I'm allergic to silence, she adds. There's a night coming. Blood on linen. A song in the background. He lights a cigarette. Then I hope it's Sinatra. Many people still think that Joey's charisma was just a mask, that underneath it was chaos ready to erupt. But what if it wasn't a mask? What if it was armor? So what do you think? Was Joey hiding madness or shielding us from a mind too clear? The Gallo Crew begins to split its operations. Some men still loyal to Proface, others quietly aligning with Joey's vision. The lines blur. The old rules bend. And in the margins, Joey writes poetry about loyalty and loss. One of his entries reads, they tell me to sit, so I run. They tell me to wait, so I whistle. I don't want their gold. I want the map. That poem, later found in a burned notebook, would be quoted decades later in a documentary no one watched at noon on PBS. But in 1956, it's just one more line in a story that's beginning to tilt, because Joey doesn't know it yet, but the blood is coming. And the music? It's already started to play. There are moments in gangster history where the air feels charged, like thunders coiling somewhere just behind the clouds. Brooklyn in early 1957 is one of those moments. The stoops are quieter. The coffee shops are more suspicious. And Joey Gallo? He's pacing longer than usual, eyes darting like he's trying to read headlines before they print. That's when the whispers become sirens. The Profi family, Joey's unofficial godfathers, start collecting tighter. Tribute goes up. Favors are called in. Men who were once just shadows become visible, and they're not smiling. And at the center of it all, a growing tension between the Gallows and their boss, Joe Proface. You see, Proface is a man of the old cloth, literally. He keeps a personal chapel, makes generous donations to the Vatican, and prefers dinners that begin with prayer. But his appetite for tribute is legendary. Some say he taxes his soldiers so heavily, it makes more sense to hustle independently. Joey certainly thinks so. He calls Proface the Pope with the empty offering plate. Not to his face, of course, not yet. It all starts to splinter over a shipment of stolen goods. Nothing grand, just some cigarettes and furs. The Gallo Crew pulls it off cleanly, moves the merchandise fast, and pockets a sizable chunk. But when the profits are tallied, Proface demands a share that's not just steep, it's punitive. Joey balks, Kid Blast growls. Larry, the older Gallo brother, tries to mediate. But Joey... He walks out of the sit-down early, leaves his chair pushed back just slightly, like he might return. But don't count on it. That's Joey's way. Half threat, half poem. From that moment on, lines are drawn. Joey doesn't declare war, not outright. He starts with passive defiance. He skips a tribute meeting, sends a book of blank pages as a gift to Proface, wrapped in black ribbon. No note. Just silence. Proface is furious. Carmine Persico, now a rising star in the Profi family, calls Joey a clown with a matchbook. He means it as an insult. Joey hears it and responds, "Clowns get applause, matches get remembered." And then comes the Cafe Reggio incident. A known Proface enforcer enters the Greenwich Village Cafe one rainy evening, expecting a quiet espresso and perhaps a whispered threat or two. Instead, he finds Joey reading Kafka and humming. The enforcer, looking to assert dominance, makes a comment about kids playing Don. Joey doesn't flinch. Instead, he gestures to the waiter and orders the man a slice of pie. "You've got sugar in your tone," Joey says. "Might as well eat something sweet. It's not violent. It's humiliating." The enforcer never returns to the cafe, but the story does. It spreads. And just like that, Joey's not just defiant. He's publicly defiant. Back at Proface headquarters, the murmurs become planning sessions. The Gallows are now considered a rogue outfit, a problem to solve. But here's the rub. They're also popular. Not just among civilians, but among other street-level soldiers. Joey treats his men with respect, shares the profits, doesn't bark orders unless necessary, and he listens, actually listens, when someone speaks. One man from the Bronx says, "Working for Joey feels like breathing different air. That kind of loyalty is dangerous." Joey senses the tension tightening, but he doesn't back down. Instead, he expands. He begins recruiting more aggressively. Leaner, younger guys, outsiders, guys who were too clever or too strange for the traditional crews. He calls them the odd ones, and they love him for it. He tells them, "This isn't about money. It's about legacy. We're building something that will get whispered long after we're gone." They believe him. How could you not? Joey has that effect. At this point, even the police are confused. They know Joey's bad news, but he's elusive, smart, charming in that way that makes you forget he just implied something sinister. When questioned, he gives quotes like, "Sure, I read Nietzsche. Doesn't mean I kill like him." Or, "If I wanted to hide something, I'd put it in a sermon." No one reads those. Detectives leave interviews more puzzled than informed. One night, Joey walks alone to the Fulton Ferry Pier. The East River is black glass, wind slapping the docks like an old debt collector. There's a man waiting, not a gangster, a journalist. Joey called him. The two talk for nearly an hour. Only one line is published. "Some families worship God, some worship money. Me, I think loyalty's enough to keep you warm, if you've got the coat for it." That quote ends up in a footnote in a paperback no one reads, until years later, when Joey's ghost becomes fashionable again. Many people still think that Joey craved chaos, but maybe, just maybe, he craved clarity. In a world of secrets, he spoke plainly, even if he did it with riddles. So what do you think? Was he stirring the pot or just refusing to eat the old recipe? And then, the final spark, prophecy. Tired of the theatrics, issues orders, quiet ones. Joey's to be warned, severely, not killed, but rattled. The warning never lands, because the messenger disappears. A week later, a note shows up at Proface's office. Typed, no return address. Some dogs bark, some bite, some draw chalk outlines in verse. Proface doesn't laugh. No one does. Joey Gallo is no longer a clever street kid. He's an idea, and ideas are hard to bury, especially when they walk upright, in polished shoes, with a lion's stare and a poet's tongue. Brooklyn isn't sleeping much by 1958, not the way it used to. You can feel it in the shift of window shades at 2 a.m., in the murmured conversations outside butcher shops, and in the subtle way everyone starts double-locking their doors. The tension isn't loud yet, but it's vibrating, like an orchestra tuning up for something violent. And Joey Gallo? He's rehearsing. He's always rehearsing. He calls it setting the stage, though the stage is now every street from Columbia to Court, every cafe that turns a blind eye, every stoop that's heard a Gallo story and chosen not to question it. At the center of this quiet theater sits Cafe Reggio, where Joey holds his informal office hours. Greenwich Village in those days is a curious place. Half literary salon, half streetwise chessboard. Poets drink espresso beside petty thieves. Jazz musicians argue with ex-priests about whether God plays the saxophone. And Joey fits right in. He dresses different now. Double-breasted suits with slim ties, silk pocket squares, polished shoes you could see your doubts in. He's not loud about it, just consistent. As if the clothes are less fashion, more declaration. Yes, I'm still here. And no, you can't predict me. At Reggio, he meets with all kinds. Artists, racketeers, sometimes a blend of both. One Tuesday afternoon, he's spotted sitting across from a painter named Marlowe, talking about the shadows in Caravaggio's work. He painted like he owed someone money, Joey says, smirking. Marlowe laughs, but it's nervous laughter. Joey means it as a compliment. These cafe meetings aren't just eccentricity. They're moves. Deliberate. Joey is building a network that stretches beyond traditional mafia lines. He's forging relationships with union reps, political hopefuls, jazz club owners, and Harlem gamblers. He buys people dinner, lends them favors, remembers their kids' birthdays, and they remember him. Because Joey Gallo doesn't forget faces, or favors, or insults. Especially not insults. One evening, a Proface loyalist walks into Reggio unannounced. His name's Nunzio, low-level muscle with more scars than brains. He orders coffee, waits until Joey finishes a conversation, and then drops a folded napkin on the table. Joey opens it. Inside, a matchstick, a toothpick, and a black button. 3 symbols, 1 message. Matchstick, fire. Toothpick, fragility. Button, silence. A veiled warning meant to imply he's playing with danger, that he's a small piece on someone else's coat, easily lost. Joey studies the napkin, then he stands, walks to the barista, borrows a pen, and writes a reply directly on the back. Add a mirror, then look closer. He hands it back to Nunzio without looking at him. The message is received. Nunzio leaves. No one at Reggio talks about it afterward, but they all remember. Back in Brooklyn, the Gallo crew is getting sharper, leaner, more professional. They've started operating more like a startup than a street gang. Territory maps pinned in back rooms, coded ledgers, even a lawyer on retainer who doesn't ask questions. Mackie starts referring to Joey's operation as Gallo, Inc. Joey laughs. Incorporated, until we disappear. He's joking, but not really, because for all his presence, Joey still disappears at will. Sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. No one knows where. He returns with new books, new ideas, new sketches. One night, he returns with a short story he's written by hand. It's about a man who fakes his own funeral just to see who cries honestly. He never explains it. Many people still think that Joey Gallo didn't care about money, that he was in it for the chaos, the thrill. But others believe he saw crime as a means to fund an empire of ideas. So what do you think? Was he playing chess or writing a symphony no one else could hear? But the Profi family is growing less tolerant. Joey's defiance has gone from annoyance to liability. Rumors swirl that Joe Proface has issued a quiet green light, a semi-sanctioned strike, just enough permission for loyalists to test Joey's armor. And Joey knows it, so he doubles down. He expands into new territory. Just 2 blocks at first, then 4. Moves in without asking, but pays off the right locals to ensure silence. He distributes turkeys at Thanksgiving, slips money to old men who nod but never speak. He calls it soft invasion, and it works, because no one resists a villain who's generous with the crumbs. The Proface loyalists start calling him the mayor of nowhere. It's an insult, meant to suggest his territory isn't real. Joey hears it and replies, "Nowhere is still a place. It just takes better directions to find." Then comes the incident at the Silk Room. The Silk Room is a private lounge, half strip club, half money launderer, tucked behind a seafood joint in Sheepshead Bay. Joey enters with 3 men and a casual smile. He's there for a chat with a bookie who's been double-dealing, working both Gallo and Proface crews, hoping no one compares ledgers. Joey doesn't raise his voice. He simply walks to the man's table, takes off his coat, and places a single glove on the bar. "I don't need 2, he says, "because this won't take long." No threats, no guns, just posture. The man caves in minutes. Later, someone asks Joey why he brought a glove. He says, to show him how cold it could get. By now, even the commission is uneasy. They've got enough wars to manage. Gallo might be small in numbers, but he's loud in symbolism, and he's unpredictable. That makes him dangerous. And yet, the bosses hesitate, because Joey hasn't actually broken the rules. He's danced around them, bent them, but he's smart. He knows where the cliff starts and how to make it look like a sidewalk. Then comes the most bizarre move yet. A poem mailed to Joe Proface himself, typed, signed with a red fingerprint. The lion paced, not for hunger, but because the cage grew dull, and those who fed him once now worry when he doesn't roar. No threats, no names, just metaphor. Proface doesn't respond, but he begins preparing. Because when poetry shows up in a world that deals in bullets and silence, it means something's about to break. Joey Gallo, once a boy sketching tigers in a tenement, is now a storm cloud on the Mafia's weather map. No longer containable, no longer ignorable. He doesn't just want more, he wants it to mean something, and that makes him the most dangerous thing of all. A gangster with a cause. Albert Gallo walks like a man born 2 beats behind the music. Always in Joey's shadow, always just a second too slow with the joke, the punch, the decision. But what he lacks in instinct, he makes up for in loyalty so ferocious it could border on religious. They call him Kid Blast now. Not because he's loud, but because when he moves, it's sudden. Like a fuse you didn't realize was burning until it hit the powder. He's Joey's baby brother. But out in the streets, when someone sees him approaching with that cold-eyed calm, they don't see a little brother. They see a trigger in human form. The Gallow Crew is bigger now. Not enormous, but precise. Think scalpel, not hammer. There's Larry Gallo, the oldest brother, calm, calculating, the one who writes things down and keeps everyone's temper from punching through too many walls. Then Kid Blast, all sharp edges and growling silence. Mackie, the pool hustler who laughs at everything except debts. And others, quiet faces, loyal ones, men who found in Joey a version of leadership they never knew they craved. But it's Albert, Kid Blast, who fascinates people, because where Joey is artful, Kid Blast is surgical. Where Joey talks in metaphors, Albert speaks with his fists. He doesn't quote Nietzsche. He doesn't read Kafka. He doesn't philosophize. His gospel is, you don't mess with my brother. That's it. And when you break that rule, things tend to break back. There's a story from late '58. A young associate named Jimmy Red tries to show off in front of a couple of go-go dancers, drops Joey's name at a club in Soho, claims to be running uptown ops for the Gallow Crew. Pure fiction. He gets drinks out of it, a little attention, a lot of swagger. Word gets back to Kid Blast, and that's it. No lecture, no warning. Albert finds Jimmy 2 days later at a pool hall, doesn't touch him. just walks over, picks up a cue ball, and places it gently on the table in front of him. "You're lucky," he says. Jimmy gulps. I didn't mean nothing." Albert cuts him off. "No, really, you're lucky." Then he walks out. Next day, Jimmy's gone. Nobody knows where. Maybe he fled, maybe not. Either way, the cue ball gets passed around the Gallo crew for weeks like a souvenir. Joey, for his part, doesn't encourage Albert's volatility. He worries about it, pulls him aside more and more. "You can't go nuclear every time someone says my name wrong." Kid Blast shrugs. "It ain't about names." Joey tilts his head. "Then what?" Albert's eyes flash. "It's about truth." Joey smiles, half proud, half terrified, because even he doesn't always know what his little brother's capable of. Albert wasn't always like this. As a kid, he was soft, sensitive, the kind who cried at cartoons and tried to fix broken toys for stray cats. But something shifted in his teens. Maybe it was the street fights. Maybe it was seeing Joey come home bloodied one too many times. Whatever it was, it turned the softness into something else. Now he's the man who walks into a room and makes it colder. Not louder, colder. There's a moment, one of those quiet ones no one writes about, when the Gallo brothers are sitting on a rooftop, eating sandwiches, looking out over the city like kings without a kingdom. The wind is soft. The lights blink like they're breathing. Joey says, "Do you ever wonder what we'd be doing if we weren't doing this?" Albert takes a long bite, chews slowly, swallows. "Then, you'd be teaching. I'd be breaking people's fingers for forgetting to pay tuition." They both laugh, but not all the way, because it's not entirely a joke. Back on the streets, people are starting to recognize Kid Blast more. Not by name. He still doesn't talk much. But by rhythm. The way his boots sound on wet pavement. The way his stare cuts through small talk. The way his silence carries authority. He's becoming Joey's enforcer, his message, his edge, and sometimes his echo. One night, a Gallo crew runner gets ambushed by Proface loyalists, cornered in a deli, roughed up, warned to pick a real side. The runner escapes, bruised and bleeding, and tells the story with shame in his voice. Albert says nothing, but the next evening, the deli burns down. No one's hurt, but there's a note left in the ashes, scrawled on butcher paper. "That was my silence. You won't like my reply." It's not signed, but everyone knows. Many people still think Kid Blast was just Joey's shadow, but others say he was the reason Joey could walk so boldly. Because behind every smirk, there was a loaded silence waiting to explode. So what do you think? Was Albert Gallo a sidekick, or the sword Joey kept sheathed in charm? There's a rumor, never confirmed, that Albert once walked into a Proface-controlled bar, ordered a drink, and left a pocket knife on the counter with the initials KB carved into it. He didn't say a word, just sipped his drink, left a 20, and disappeared into the fog. The knife stayed there for months, until someone finally removed it. No one ever claimed it, but no one ever sat in that stool again either. The Gallo brothers, Joey, Larry, and Albert, are becoming a triangle that the Profi family can't quite predict. Larry is the voice of reason. Joey is the mind. And Albert is the reminder. The constant threat that any slight, no matter how small, will echo back with force. And when Albert does speak, which is rare, he tends to say things that land like gravel in the gears. Like, "Some men speak with guns, I speak with consequence." Or, "Apologies aren't worth much, but they weigh more in teeth." That last one gets printed on a t-shirt in some bootlegger's basement years later. But it started in a basement that smelled like gasoline and fear. In time, people learn to fear Joey, but they avoid Albert, because Joey might spare you. Albert won't, and not because he's cruel, but because loyalty to him is law. The Profi family begins to feel boxed in. Every move they make echoes back. Every message they send, Joey already seems to know. Every corner they try to reclaim, the Gallows reclaim back, faster, quieter, sharper. They begin to suspect something worse than betrayal. They begin to suspect vision, and that's when they start to panic. In the winter of 1959, the streets of Red Hook carry that gray, slow churn. Snowmelt mixed with motor oil, slush dragging against curbs like forgotten promises. It's the kind of season where most men lie low, wait for spring, and keep their heads down under wool caps and false smiles. But Joey Gallo, he starts a rebellion. And it doesn't begin with a gun. It begins with a gesture, a refusal. The Profi family, growing more rigid, more paranoid, and more insatiable by the week, calls for an increase in tribute. Every crew is expected to cough up a larger cut. No exceptions, no negotiations. Joe Proface himself sends word down through the ranks with the finality of scripture. Joey hears the demand, sits in his apartment, lights a cigarette, then laughs. More? He says aloud to no one. For what? The honor of being underfed? Larry urges caution. We're still part of the family. Joey replies, then maybe this family needs a new will. And just like that, the first brick of open rebellion is laid. He doesn't send a message. He sends silence, the most dangerous form of communication in the underworld. For weeks, the Gallow crew pays nothing. No envelopes, no nods, no explanations. Just quiet, and in that silence, something begins to shift. Other crews notice. Some whisper admiration. Others sniff betrayal. But none of them deny one simple truth. Joey Gallo just challenged Joe Proface to a staring contest, and Joey doesn't blink. The Proface family responds with pressure. Phone calls at odd hours, men parked in cars across from Gallo haunts. One night, 3 soldiers corner a Gallo runner in an alley and deliver a message the old-fashioned way, with boots and broken ribs. Joey retaliates the next night. Only he doesn't send fists. He sends flowers, a dozen black tulips, delivered anonymously to the same 3 soldiers' mothers. No note, just petals the color of bad dreams. It's not violence. Not technically, but it's loud. Soon after, Joey starts recruiting more aggressively, especially among younger soldiers disillusioned with Proface's increasingly demanding rule. He doesn't promise them riches. He promises them autonomy. He says things like, "Why worship a God who eats more than he blesses? And I don't need an empire. I need a circle that doesn't leak." These aren't just clever lines. They're manifestos. And they land. Men start drifting toward Joey, slipping out of Proface's shadow and into Gallows' candlelit world of jazz, poetry, and power. The Proface family officially notices the defection, so they respond the old way, with a wedding. Not a real one, a symbolic one. A sit-down arranged under the pretense of peace. Invitations sent. Ceremonies rehearsed. Gifts exchanged. And all of it cloaked in tradition, in honor, in a performance so scripted it might as well have been a Broadway play. Joey doesn't attend, sends a fruit basket instead, with a card. It reads, "May your unions be fruitful. May your debts be loud." Prophecy is livid. He doesn't show it, of course. He just starts sharpening the knives. And then comes the Sahara Lounge standoff, a flashpoint dressed in dim lights and clinking glasses. It starts with Carmine Persico entering the lounge unannounced, flanked by 2 men who clearly aren't there for the cocktails. Joey is already at the bar, sketching on a napkin, a glass of scotch sweating beside his elbow. Persico approaches. "Joey," he says, "we need to talk." Joey doesn't look up. "You brought an audience. I hope you're performing." Persico doesn't smile. "We're not here for poetry." Joey finally turns, slowly, calmly. There's a pause. "You sure? Because your posture says rehearsed." A beat passes. The tension tightens like a piano wire. Then Joey tosses the napkin at Persico. It's a sketch of 3 wolves wearing masks made of coins. "You take from the pack, you wear the debt," he says. Persico leaves without incident, but everyone watching knows what just happened. Joey Gallo just dressed down a future boss, in public, with pencil and metaphor, and lived. Many people still think that Joey didn't respect tradition. But maybe that's not true. Maybe he just refused to confuse tradition with wisdom. So what do you think? Was he tearing down a system, or just clearing space for a better one? The Gallo Crew now begins holding their own meetings, not underground, not in hiding, but out in the open. At restaurants, cafes, rooftops. Joey even hosts one in an art gallery. Abstract paintings on every wall. Hors d'oeuvres served by a man with a saxophone tattoo on his neck. It's the most elegant insurrection Brooklyn's ever seen. One guest calls it a cocktail party for outlaws. Another calls it a funeral for obedience. Joey calls it Tuesday. Back at Proface headquarters, decisions are made. The Gallows are no longer difficult. They are enemy. And in the Cosa Nostra, enemies aren't debated. They're erased. But Joey expects this. He's always expected it. So he prepares. Not by digging in, but by spreading out. The Gallo Crew becomes mobile, unpredictable, split across safe houses and storefronts. No one sleeps in the same place twice. No one makes the same route twice in a week. And Joey himself becomes mythic, appearing at jazz clubs unannounced, vanishing before the third set, leaving behind cigarette butts and whispered lines, like, if they want to find me, they better learn to read riddles. Or, you can't shoot what doesn't sit still. Then one night, out of nowhere, a man delivers Joey a message. Not from Proface, from someone higher. A consigliere. Old Gray, tired of wars, he says, you're young, clever, but cleverness burns fast. Step back before you become ash. Joey looks him in the eye and replies, ash makes good ink. By the end of 1959, the war hasn't officially started, but it's begun. And Joey? He's already narrating the prologue. By early 1960, Joey Gallo's name no longer just echoes in Brooklyn alleyways. It ricochets across boroughs, across poker tables, across whispered phone lines from Bensonhurst to Bay Ridge. Not as a man, not even as a gangster, but as an idea. The kind of idea that keeps old men awake at night, staring out windows and wondering how a street kid with a sketch pad ended up outthinking the 5 families. The war doesn't start with bullets. It starts with silence, and then with smoke. One morning in February, 3 men loyal to Proface enter a Gallo-controlled barbershop under the guise of business. They don't cause a scene. They just sit, drink espresso, watch the door. The message is clear. We're here. We're watching. And we remember. That same night, the barbershop burns to the ground. No witnesses, no fire alarms, just embers glowing like tired stars and a melted sign that once read, Precision Cuts. There's no official claim of responsibility, but everyone knows. Joey doesn't deny it. He simply walks into another Proface business the next day, tips the bartender, and leaves behind a single match. Still unlit, still dry, still a choice. This is no longer rebellion. It's chess, and Joey is playing fast. He splits his crew into cells, each with separate leaders, separate responsibilities. No one man holds all the keys. Not even Joey. It's a web, a network, and it drives the Proface hierarchy into frustration. They're used to loyalty flowing upward, not sideways. They're used to orders being obeyed, not interpreted. Joey doesn't give orders. He gives themes, and the men who follow him, they improvise like jazz musicians. Even his language starts to change. He stops referring to territory and starts using words like influence, momentum, and narrative. One associate jokes that Joey's running a political campaign disguised as a turf war, but no one's laughing when businesses start shifting allegiances. When shopkeepers begin paying voluntarily to the Gallows, not because they fear retaliation, but because they trust protection. One bodega owner says it plainly, Joey's boys sweep my sidewalk, yours don't. That quote makes it to Joe Proface's desk. He tears the paper in half, and then, like clockwork, comes the counterstrike. 5 men, 2 vans, one dark alley behind a social club. They're not amateurs. They've been sent with precision and permission. Their target? Larry Gallo, the older brother, the steady one, the voice of reason. The trap is set cleanly. Larry's lured outside under the guise of a casual conversation. He never returns, not that night. Instead, Joey gets the call. 3 hours later, he finds his brother unconscious, bloodied and zip-tied to a basement radiator, but alive. They beat him. They didn't kill him. Why? Because someone, somewhere, still thinks there's room to negotiate. Joey doesn't retaliate immediately. He waits, and then sends a message that echoes longer than gunfire. He walks into a Proface-connected butcher shop, buys nothing, but leaves behind a violin case. No violin, just a single item inside, a brick of salt wrapped in black cloth, and a quote written in careful block letters, "Preserve your dead with care." He doesn't wait to see who opens it. Many people still think Joey Gallo went too far, too fast. But others argue he understood the times better than anyone. So what do you think? Was he provoking chaos or preventing it from being dictated by someone else? By now, the public knows something is happening. Reporters circle. Police patrols increase. But the details are murky. Everyone suspects mob war. No one can prove it. And Joey, he leans into it. He starts giving interviews, not to big outlets, just fringe writers, college newspapers, artsy journalists from the village. He says things like, "Power is just the illusion of options," or, "They say I'm dangerous, I say they're lazy." One article quotes him as the beatnik Don. Another calls him Brooklyn's smiling contradiction. He keeps a scrapbook of the clippings. Not out of vanity, out of strategy. He says to Mackie, "If I'm a myth, they'll think twice before trying to bury me." Meanwhile, Kid Blast becomes an avalanche. He no longer waits for provocation. He intercepts, disrupts, dismantles. A Proface courier disappears. A numbers drop is robbed mid-transaction. A car dealership connected to the Colombo wing mysteriously has every windshield shattered in a single night. 37 cars, 37 bricks. No witnesses, no prints, just a business card taped to the manager's office door. Blank, except for a tiny ink drawing. A lion's eye. Back in the inner circles of the 5 families, the discussion shifts from containment to elimination. But even here, there's division. Some say Joey's becoming too big. Others say he's becoming too loud, drawing attention the entire organization doesn't want. A few, quietly, suggest he's right, that the old ways are cracking, that maybe the Gallows are simply early. But majority rules, and the majority wants blood. Joey senses the weight shifting, so he starts talking legacy. He tells his crew, "We won't be here forever." But the story sticks. He encourages them to write journals, sketch their memories, record what happens. "Because if they get us," he says, "they better know we were here. Not just in scars, but in sentences." One final story from that winter. Joey walks into a bookstore in Soho, buys 10 copies of The Prince by Machiavelli, hands them out to his crew. Inside each, he scribbles the same line. "If you're going to be feared, learn how to whisper." That line, it's now tattooed on the forearm of a Gallo descendant, decades later. Because even when Joey made war, he made it beautiful. The year is 1961, and Brooklyn feels like it's holding its breath. Not in panic, not in fear, but in anticipation, like a match held just above a fuse. Everyone knows something's coming. They just don't know what it will look like. A gunshot, a funeral, a handshake that feels too firm. Joey Gallo, however, seems entirely unbothered. He moves through the tension like it's jazz, sliding through it, bending the tempo, adding his own rhythm to the chaos. He's the only man in the borough who can walk into a diner full of enemies and order scrambled eggs like it's a church social. He wears a camel hair coat now, smokes slimmer cigarettes. His hair's slicker, his voice slower. And when people greet him, they don't say Joey anymore. They say Gallo, like a title, like a brand. But while Joey Gallo, the symbol, grows sharper, Joey the man grows quieter, at least behind the curtain. He's restless, sleeps less, draws more. Sketchbooks pile up, some filled with blueprints, others with abstract chaos, circles, cities, faces. One book is just 100 pages of lions in different poses. When asked what he's drawing, he answers, escape routes. But he doesn't mean tunnels, he means ideas. That spring, a shift occurs. One of the Proface capos, an older man named Salvatore Monaco, defects. Not loudly, not dramatically. He just starts attending Gallo dinners. When asked why, he simply says, "The Gallows listen when you speak." That's rare these days. Joey doesn't celebrate, doesn't gloat. He just adds another chair to the table. But this defection sends a shockwave through the Proface hierarchy, because Salvatore isn't a nobody. He's been around. He's seen blood, made money, kept secrets. And for him to jump ship, that's not inconvenience, that's insubordination. And in Cosa Nostra, insubordination is just an elegant word for treason. Proface responds with fury. A list is drawn, and at the top, Gallo. By summer, the streets stop pretending. The Proface-Gallo conflict becomes what the papers will later call the First Colombo War, though at the time, nobody's sure what to name it. Hitmen circle, safe houses rotate, cafe conversations grow shorter, shoulders stiffer, and Joey? He sharpens, not his guns, his messaging. One move becomes legend. The Gallo crew discovers that a Proface affiliate is using a local fish market as a money drop. Instead of raiding it, Joey shows up with a crate of lobsters, hands them over for free. No note, no threat, just a smile and a wink. The next day, the drop is abandoned. Why? Because rumor spreads that the lobsters were poisoned. They weren't, but the idea of danger does the work of a dozen guns. Later, when asked why he did it, Joey says, "You don't have to kill a man to bury him. Just make him walk backwards long enough." Meanwhile, Kid Blast is escalating. Proface loyalists vanish without struggle. Cars are found torched in patterns. 4-point diamonds, always facing north. The message is unclear, but the terror? Crystal. Albert Gallo rarely speaks in meetings now. He just stands behind Joey like a storm in a silk shirt. Once, someone suggests dialing things down, just a little. Albert breaks a chair. No one mentions it again. And Larry? He's growing tired. The oldest Gallo brother starts missing meetings, talks less, drinks more. He tells Joey, "We can't fight forever." Joey replies, "Then let's make sure they never forget why we did." They sit in silence after that, brothers, bound not by blood but by defiance. Many people still think the Gallo crew lost control during the war, but others say they never wanted control. What they wanted, what Joey engineered, was disruption. So what do you think? Were they failing to lead, or succeeding in burning down the throne? And then, on a hot August evening, it happens. A sit-down request. Direct, unexpected. Joe Proface, sick, weary, no longer untouchable, offers to negotiate. A meeting is set at a neutral location, a funeral home of all places. The irony doesn't go unnoticed. Joey arrives in a gray suit, tie loose, face unreadable. He enters the back room, sees the chairs, the candles, the man who's been trying to end him for 2 years. Proface doesn't rise, just gestures to the seat across. Joey sits. There is no handshake, only stillness. The conversation is short, civil, almost polite. It ends with Proface saying, "You're too theatrical." Joey replies, "You're too predictable." And then it's over. No deal, no peace, just a funeral home full of ghosts and possibilities. That night, Joey gathers his men in a warehouse by the waterfront. He doesn't yell, he doesn't command. He just says, "They're not afraid of us." Not really. They're afraid of what we represent. That the old ways don't work anymore. That loyalty can look different. That style matters. That silence doesn't always equal respect. He pours a drink, lights a cigarette. They're not fighting us. They're fighting time. By fall, the war enters a strange phase. No one wins. No one surrenders. But the city begins to adjust, like it always does. Joey becomes myth. Some say they saw him ride a bike down Mulberry Street singing Sinatra. Others swear he was spotted reading poetry to pigeons on a church roof. One man claims he played chess with a bishop in Queens and won. None of it matters, because all of it feels possible. And in that strange, stalling moment, Joey Gallo becomes something more than dangerous. He becomes inevitable. There's a calm that settles after enough bullets have been fired. Not peace, not forgiveness, just exhaustion. Brooklyn in early 1962 lives in that kind of hush. The streets aren't safer, just quieter. It's the sort of quiet that follows a fist fight no one won, when both sides are too tired to swing again, but still angry enough to stare across the room with bleeding knuckles. Joey Gallo doesn't blink, because even in exhaustion he thrives. This lull in violence isn't a truce, it's opportunity. And Joey, ever the tactician, uses it not to rest, but to rearrange. He calls it the quiet shuffle. First, he moves his operations uptown. Not all the way. Just enough to shake surveillance, change patterns. Bars become butcher shops. Meetings happen in museums instead of back rooms. Orders are passed via jazz club pianists and bookstore clerks. His messages? Still riddles, still brilliant. Once, a butcher receives a lamb shoulder wrapped in newspaper. Inside, a note. We prefer peace, but we've remembered where knives live. No name, no follow-up. The message lands anyway. With Proface's health declining, the Colombo wing starts shifting under Joe Colombo himself, who's trying to inherit power without the burden of Joey's war. He proposes a new approach. Less blood, more business. Joey listens. Joey declines. It's not about the business, he says, sipping wine on his fire escape. It's about who gets to choose how it's run. But behind the scenes, something unusual happens. Joey Gallo starts writing. Not just scribbles, not just journal fragments, an actual manuscript. Part memoir, part philosophy, part fever dream. He calls it The Smile Behind the Curtain. It opens with this line: once upon a streetlight, I mistook survival for destiny, and I've been wrong ever since. It's never published, but fragments leak. A professor at NYU gets hold of a few pages and reads them aloud in a criminology course. The students don't know what to make of it. One of them writes in their notes, he's either a madman or a prophet. Possibly both. Joey's world becomes increasingly surreal. He starts wearing gloves, even in summer, carries a notebook with pages torn out in deliberate shapes, paints abstract murals in alleyways, always overnight, always unsigned. They're gone by sunrise, washed away. But some swear they saw lions in smoke, men with wings, guns melting into roses, and yet he never stops working. He reorganizes the Gallo crew into strict compartments. If one falls, the others don't topple. They meet in diners, in libraries, in subway stations. Everyone knows the protocol. Everyone knows the code. Loyalty is no longer a word. It's a system. One day, a young runner asks Joey if they're winning. Joey lights a cigarette, blows smoke. Then, you don't win a storm. You just survive it long enough to learn how to dance in the rain. The boy writes it down. Years later, it becomes the title of a documentary. And then comes the twist. Joey begins meeting with artists. Real ones. Gallery owners. Poets. A filmmaker who lives on the edge of Alphabet City and smells like turpentine and cigarettes. These aren't mob guys. They're fringe thinkers. Weird. Broke. Brilliant. Joey listens to them. Not politely, intently, he says to one sculptor, "You make things out of silence. I make silence out of things. Same trade." The sculptor, shaken, offers Joey a marble bust. It's abstract, just lines and angles. But Joey stares at it for a long time, then says, he looks like he's keeping a secret. Many people still think Joey Gallo lost control of his empire during this period, but others say this is when he found its soul. So, what do you think? Was he drifting from power? or redefining it altogether. In the neighborhood, rumors grow strange. One claims Joey's planning to run for political office, city council maybe. Another says he's going to publish a book under a pseudonym and vanish to Sicily. And one, told only in whispers, claims Joey's begun carrying a Bible everywhere, but not for prayer, for misdirection. Only the people closest to him know what's true, and even they aren't sure. There's one moment that sticks. Joey walking through Carroll Gardens at dusk. A child calls out from a stoop, "Hey, Mr. Gallo, are you a good guy or a bad guy?" Joey stops, turns, kneels, and says, "That depends on how good your memory is," then stands and walks away. The kid tells that story until he's old enough to forget it properly. Then, almost quietly, Joe Proface dies, natural causes, end of an era. But no one celebrates, because power doesn't die, it migrates, and Joey knows it. He doesn't host a party, doesn't raise a glass. He simply writes 2 words in his notebook, vacuum, pressure, and circles them. Twice, the Profi family reorganizes into the Colombo family. New leadership, new rules. Joey is offered another sit-down. This time he accepts. He arrives alone, unarmed, wearing gloves. The meeting lasts 20 minutes. No one speaks of what's said, but Joey leaves smiling, and the war, at least publicly, ends. For a while, things settle. The violence cools, the tributes soften. Joey Gallo walks streets again without flinching. But beneath the calm, something hums, like the pause between songs, the quiet between lightning and thunder. Because even a poet knows the end of a war is just the intermission before the final act. It's 1963 now, and in the smoky rhythm of post-war Brooklyn, people start using Joey Gallo's name like punctuation. You hear it in corners. "Careful, Gallo's back in town." Or, "Heard Gallo opened another place." Or just Gallo, whispered like a warning or a dare. The war may be over, but no one's fooled. Joey Gallo is still building something. You just can't see the shape of it yet. He's subtler now. His movements cleaner. His suits darker. His smile still cuts. But the blade's been polished. Less flash, more precision. He speaks less in riddles, more in questions. And when he walks into a room, people don't stand out of respect. They stand because it's safer than sitting. Joey's focus shifts inward. He starts holding smaller meetings, 5, maybe 6 trusted men at a time. They discuss more than jobs and turf. They talk philosophy, politics, art. One night, he compares mob hierarchy to classical music. The bosses are the cellos, slow, low, heavy. We're percussion, fast, loud, unexpected. Someone jokes that Joey's a piano. Beautiful until you slam the lid on your fingers. Joey laughs, and then doesn't. He buys a warehouse in Gowanus. Nothing special, just brick, steel, dust. But inside, he builds something unusual. A private room, hidden behind a false wall, soundproofed, furnished in velvet and mahogany. No business is ever conducted there. Only reading, sketching, silence. He calls it the mouth, as in the part that speaks only when no one's listening. That summer, Joey begins investing quietly in art galleries, jazz clubs, independent cinemas. Small, bleeding-edge operations no mobster would dare touch. Everyone else is chasing construction contracts and union bribes. Joey? He's underwriting a 16mm film about loss and memory. Donating cash to a struggling playwright with a heroin problem and a typewriter that misses letters. When asked why, he shrugs. "I've shaken enough hands. Time to mold something." The Gallow Crew adapts. Mackie handles logistics. Kid Blast controls personnel, with a list of names that changes weekly. Larry, though still involved, becomes more like a shadow, drifting, quieter, occasionally visiting Joey just to sit in that velvet room and talk about nothing. And then there's Carla. She enters like a rumor. Singer, photographer, maybe both, maybe neither. No one's quite sure. But one night, Joey walks into a club in Midtown. hears her voice on stage, a low, breathy jazz tune, and doesn't move for the entire set after he sends a single white rose to the dressing room. No note, she sends it back. The next night, he comes again. This time he waits backstage. You didn't like the flower? He asks. I didn't like the assumption, she replies. Joey grins. He's hooked. Their relationship is slow burn, electric. She's not impressed by the myth. Calls him out, challenges him, makes him second guess his own metaphors. You think being unreadable is power, she tells him one night. But sometimes mystery just means you're scared. He doesn't respond, but later, alone, he tears a page from his notebook and writes, She sees the lion's teeth, not the cage. They begin appearing in public. Not often, but enough. The papers notice. Joey Gallo dating jazz singer. One article calls her his moll. Joey writes a letter to the editor, says, She's not my moll. She's the reason I started blinking again. It's never published, but Carla frames it anyway. Around this time, Joey takes up photography. He shoots on film. Black and white. Grainy. Mostly faces. Mostly people who don't know they're being photographed. Strangers in rain. Children in alleys. Dogs staring at nothing. One photo, taken of a broken window reflecting the sky, becomes his favorite. He titles it, Everything Looks Up When It Breaks. Many people still think Joey was softening, but others argue he was sharpening inward, refining, compressing, preparing for something quieter and deeper. So what do you think? Was he winding down or winding back for something larger? Meanwhile, the new Colombo family leadership, under Joe Colombo himself, tries to reorganize the hierarchy. Tighter rules, clearer boundaries, less chaos. They reach out to Joey again. He listens, smiles, and says, No thank you. They ask why. He answers, Because you're still building thrones. I'm designing exits. Tension returns. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel. Crews start getting jittery. Lower-level guys are unsure who to answer to. Gallo loyalists are popping up in new places. Garbage routes, warehouses, even shipping lines. Joey isn't grabbing turf. He's infiltrating function. Quietly. Thoroughly. It's not a takeover. It's an infection. Then comes the warehouse night. A young soldier from a Colombo crew gets caught skimming cash off a Gallo-backed poker room. Instead of beating him, Joey invites him to dinner. Just the two of them, inside the warehouse. The soldier eats nervously. Joey eats calmly. After dessert, Joey leans in, says, You stole from me. Not from anger, but because you thought I wouldn't notice. The kid gulps, nods. Joey continues, But here's the thing. I always notice. A pause. Then he hands the kid a wrapped gift. Inside a mirror. No words. No beating. Just the weight of reflection. The kid never steals again. Joey tells the story later like it was a joke. But it's not. It's strategy. That fall, Carla disappears for 3 weeks. Recording session in Chicago. Joey doesn't call, doesn't write. Just sits in his apartment, playing her vinyl on loop, sketching lions with broken wings. When she returns, she finds a note. You were missed by the ghosts, not just me. She kisses him, hard, and stays. Then unexpectedly, Joey gets a visitor. Not a gangster, a priest. Not there to condemn, but to ask, What do you believe in, Joey? Joey thinks, then says, Consequences and second drafts. The priest leaves confused. Joey doesn't explain, because he never does. In the final days of 1963, a rumor spreads. Joey's been invited to speak, anonymously, at an NYU roundtable on leadership. It's unconfirmed, but someone takes a photo of the back of a man in a camel hair coat, leaving a lecture hall that night. He's holding a notebook and a rose, just one, white. By 1964, Joey Gallo is no longer just a figure of the underworld. He's become a blur across 2 dimensions, half myth, half man. To the mob, he's an irritant. To the papers, he's a headline that writes itself. To Brooklyn, he's a ghost who orders cappuccino and pays an exact change. And to himself, He's starting to wonder, because while the street still murmurs his name like a prayer or a warning, Joey walks a little slower now, speaks a little softer. He's still sharp, but there's something else in his eyes these days. Distance, like he's watching himself walk through his own life from behind a glass window. The business is still running. The Gallo Crew, as precise as ever, has trimmed fat, closed ranks. Every man in the circle knows his job. No freelancing, no ego, just rhythm. They function like a jazz quartet, fluid, responsive, and tight. Mackie oversees money and logistics, often writing in ledgers that look more like novels. Full sentences, inside jokes, doodles in the margins. Kid Blast still handles discipline, but even he's slowed, more measured. There are fewer broken bones, more cold stares, more conversations that end with silence, and that's enough. Larry, meanwhile, has faded further into the background. He shows up when it counts, nods when necessary, and keeps one foot out the door. He tells Joey one night, "You don't need me anymore." Joey replies, "That's not the point." Carla's still with him. Their apartment's full now, not with people, but with objects, paintings, books, empty wine bottles with dried flowers stuffed inside, old newspapers folded to specific pages. She leaves notes in typewriter font, taped to mirrors and walls. "You are not your neighborhood. Try silence before metaphors. You blinked in your sleep again." He never moves them, just reads them, memorizes them, sometimes sketches her sleeping, not quite capturing her hands. He titles one drawing, "If Peace Had Knuckles." Many people still think this was Gallo at his weakest, distracted, softened by love and art. But others insist this was his sharpest hour. So what do you think? Was he drifting from violence, or finally aiming it inward? He begins sending money to the families of men he once hurt. Quietly. No return address. Just envelopes. Some contain cash. Some contain quotes. One simply reads, "There's a difference between revenge and reminder." Then, one morning, Joey walks into a tailor shop he's been frequenting for years. The owner, Mr. Romano, is folding shirts. Joey says nothing, just leaves behind a suit jacket, gray wool worn thin at the shoulders. Inside the pocket, a note. "It's time for a new skin." Mr. Romano doesn't ask questions. He just makes the suit. By summer, Joey Gallo buys a boat. Not a big one. Just enough for 2 people. He names it Perspective. He doesn't sail often. Just sits at the dock with Carla, feet up, tossing bread to seagulls. "This is new," she says. He nods. "Feels temporary." He nods again, because he knows everything he touches gets temporary eventually. One day, he receives a letter. Typed anonymous, short. They still remember, but not fondly. He folds it, slips it in his wallet, carries it like a scar, not out of guilt, out of design. He shows it to Kid Blast. Albert reads it, doesn't flinch, says at least they remember. There's a moment that autumn. Joey alone in a church, empty pews, dust in the light. He walks slowly, hat in hand, doesn't kneel, doesn't pray, just sits and whispers to no one. Am I the fire or the alarm? He doesn't wait for an answer. Then comes the night at the jazz club. Joey and Carla in the corner. Soft light, red wine. A song plays. A cover of In a Sentimental Mood. Her head on his shoulder. For a moment, nothing exists but the notes. Then a man approaches. Slick suit, greased hair, too confident. A Colombo affiliate. He doesn't threaten. He just makes conversation. Too close. Too knowing. Carla tightens. Joey smiles. Asks, "You like jazz?" The man shrugs. It's noise with manners. Joey's smile fades. He finishes his drink. Says, "Then you've never been heartbroken properly." The man walks away. And 3 days later, vanishes from the neighborhood. No violence. Just absence. Back at home, Joey writes, "Power is not who you can hit. It's who disappears when you stop smiling." He underlines it. Twice. Later that year, he throws a dinner party. Not for the crew, not for business. Just friends, artists, Carla's people. He cooks, badly. Burns the fish, overseasons the soup. But everyone laughs, Joey too. At the end of the night, he reads a poem aloud, his own. The barber with blood on his apron. He doesn't explain it, just folds the page, pockets it, and washes the dishes. That night, in bed, Carla asks, "If it all ended tomorrow, would you be at peace?" He turns toward her, says, "I'd be remembered." She touches his chest, whispers, "By who?" Joey doesn't answer, but in the dark, his fingers trace shapes on her back, circles like smoke, or maybe lifeboats, something that floats. The city outside never sleeps, but that night, Joey does. For once, without flinching. For once, without dreams. By 1965, Joey Gallo has become something no one expected. Still alive. In a world where loose ends get tied with bullets and ambition often ends in a ditch, his survival is a kind of defiance all its own. The commission might not say his name aloud, but they think it, late at night, in quiet meetings. When someone suggests new leadership, someone else mutters, "What about Gallo?" And suddenly, the room goes still, because Joey's not just surviving, he's adapting. While other crews try to hold territory like sand in their fists, Joey is floating above it. He doesn't cling. He adjusts. The rules change, Joey changes faster. The jazz clubs now greet him like an old myth. Bartenders know not to ask questions. Piano players nod in rhythm when he enters. One place even reserves a red velvet booth near the back. No sign, no rope, just space. They call it the Gallo chair, and if you sit in it, you get a look. Sometimes from a waitress, sometimes from the shadows. Either way, you stand up. Carla notices he smiles less now. Not sadly, just less often. "You're quieter," she says one night, curled beside him on a worn couch. "I'm thinking longer," he replies. She nods. He adds, "Loud men die young. I've started budgeting my volume." They both laugh, softly. His crew has matured. They speak more carefully, dress sharper. Kid Blast still glowers like thunder in a pressed shirt, but he doesn't swing first anymore. Mackey's running 3 fronts, legal, shady, and somewhere in between. And Joey? He starts using language like legacy, exit strategy, succession, not to retire, to prepare, because he knows this can't last, and because, deep down, he doesn't want it to. One day, he meets with a young college student writing a thesis on organized crime. The kid is nervous, voice cracking like he's auditioning for a mistake. Joey listens, doesn't interrupt. When the kid finally asks, "What's it all for?" Joey leans back, cracks his knuckles and says, "To leave something behind they didn't know how to erase." That line ends up in the thesis. The paper gets a B+. The professor suspects it's fabricated. It's not. Many people still think Joey Gallo wanted power, but maybe he only wanted freedom, and he was willing to take it sideways. So what do you think? Was he trying to rise, or trying to slip out unnoticed? Later that summer, Joey hosts a strange event, a reading, at a jazz club. No flyers, no ads, just word of mouth. The crowd includes mobsters in tailored coats, poets with holes in their shoes, bartenders with bandaged knuckles. The lights dim. A bass line hums. Joey steps up, unbuttons his jacket, pulls out a folded sheet of paper. Then he reads, "I was not built to kneel. I was drawn to windows, to cracks, to lines, to shadows that shape themselves into lessons." He finishes. The room is silent. Someone snaps their fingers. Someone else just breathes. He doesn't stay for applause, just folds the paper, puts on his coat, and walks out. Afterward, a reporter writes, "He didn't read like a gangster. He read like a man holding his own eulogy at bay." The next week, Joey Gallo disappears, just for a few days. No one knows where. Even Carla doesn't ask. When he returns, his hands are smudged with charcoal. He hangs a new sketch in their apartment. It's a staircase, spiraling upward, but each step is a different animal. A lion, a bird, a shark, a man. He calls it the climb nobody asked for. Meanwhile, the Colombo family tries once again to regain order. A quiet offer is made. Territory, money, a promise of peace. Joey declines, says, "I don't need a seat at your table. I'm already building my own chairs." And then, just to twist the knife, he mails each Colombo captain a tiny wooden figurine, a chair with one leg missing. No note, no need. Kid Blast starts to worry. He sees the drift. "Are we still fighting?" he asks one night. Joey looks at him. "Does it feel like peace?" Albert doesn't answer, because he knows. Even silence can be a battleground. That winter, Joey visits his mother's grave. Alone. He doesn't bring flowers, just a poem. Reads it aloud, softly, then folds the page, burns it with a match, walks away without watching it turn to ash. A priest passes him on the sidewalk afterward, nods, says, "Are you finding God, Joseph?" Joey smiles. "Not yet. I'm still getting through my fathers." The wind howls off the river. The buildings lean in like they're listening. And Joey? Joey disappears into the fog like punctuation, like a comma before the next move, because he knows something no one else does. The end doesn't come with noise. It comes with clarity. And Joey Gallo is almost ready. It's 1966, and Brooklyn feels older now. Not in years, but in weight. The buildings lean heavier on their foundations, and the sidewalks remember too much. The air carries memory like cigarette smoke, thin, stubborn, and slightly sweet. Joey Gallo walks through it like a man halfway between myth and consequence. He doesn't rush, doesn't dodge, doesn't hide, because when you become a story, you stop fearing the ending. At this point, the Gallow Crew is a machine, but not a loud one. Gone are the bar brawls, the storefront shootouts, the chest-thumping swagger. What remains is surgical. Contracts, fronts, conversations behind doors with just enough grease on the hinges to whisper. Joey oversees it all like a conductor with a fading orchestra. His attention to detail is unnerving. He knows which bartender switched brands last month, which runner took a different route home, which nightclub changed its lighting because customers started feeling too visible. He notices everything and speaks about half of it. Carla remains his constant, but they don't share the same apartment anymore. Not full-time. They trade nights like favors. One week it's her loft in Tribeca. Next week, his hideout above a shuttered tailor's shop in Carroll Gardens. Their relationship has matured into something wordless. She doesn't ask about meetings. He doesn't ask about absences. When they're together, they eat cold pasta from the pan and read poetry aloud to each other. She likes Neruda. He prefers Rimbaud. She calls him a bruised philosopher. He calls her gravity with red lipstick. They fight sometimes, always softly. And when they make up, it feels like fog rolling back from a bridge no one knew was there. Then there's the night of the red balloon. It floats down from a tenement roof during a Gallo gathering. Just one. No message, no weight. Just a red balloon drifting into the circle like it belonged. Joey catches it without smiling, ties it to the back of a chair, says, "Some warnings wear makeup." Nobody speaks. And from then on, every meeting starts with someone checking the rooftops. That year, the Gallows begin backing political candidates. Not directly, not overtly, but their money starts showing up in campaigns, council seats, zoning boards. It's not about control. It's about presence. Joey calls it soft power. Kid Blast calls it war in a nicer suit. Many people still think Gallo wanted to go legitimate, but others argue he just wanted control without the noise. So what do you think? Was he turning a corner or painting the same hallway a different color? Meanwhile, whispers start reaching him from the inside that certain Colombo capos, men who've long hated him, are quietly regrouping. Not for war, not yet, but for something worse, forgetting. Because when you erase a man from the conversation, that's the first step to killing him for real. And Joey knows it, so he gets louder, in his own way. He begins publishing essays under a pseudonym. Small pieces in fringe papers, essays about memory, loyalty, philosophy. One titled "The Knife You Used to Cut Yourself" ends up in a psychology classroom at Hunter College. Another, "The Echo That Lives in Empty Rooms," circulates among poets. No one knows it's him, except Carla and maybe Mackie. But he doesn't stop there. He begins frequenting museums, starts attending gallery openings, never speaks, just watches. Once, he stares at a Rothko canvas for 40 minutes. A journalist recognizes him, snaps a photo. Joey doesn't blink, just says, "If you take the flash off, you'll see what I actually mean." Later, that image, Joey Gallo in a gray suit, arms crossed, backlit by a rectangle of smeared red and black, becomes a cover story. The title? "The Don Who Stared Too Long." That fall, Larry Gallo gets sick. It starts small, coughs, headaches, forgetfulness, but it grows, and Joey, for the first time in years, cancels meetings. He sits beside his brother's hospital bed with a book of crossword puzzles, reads them aloud, solves none of them, just says, "Every blank space deserves patience. Larry dies in November, not from violence, not from war, just from wear." At the funeral, Joey wears no tie. Kid Blast stands like a stone on fire. The priest stumbles during the eulogy. Joey steps up, reads a poem instead. Some men are anchors, not to hold you back, but to teach you what it means to float. No one claps. No one moves. Someone cries. Might have been Carla. Might have been Joey. No one asks. Afterward, Joey disappears for 2 weeks. When he returns, he's paler, sharper, quieter. But his suits are darker, and his watch ticks louder. Then, one night, back at Cafe Reggio, a young man sits across from him, wide-eyed, eager, asks, "Mr. Gallo, what now?" Joey leans forward, smiles once, then says, "We wait for them to say our name again, and when they do, we make it rhyme with thunder." The kid writes it down. Joey watches, then gets up and walks into a night thick with winter, with ghosts, and with promise, because the city isn't done with him. Not yet. By the time 1967 slides into focus, Joey Gallo is no longer chasing anything. Not territory, not power, not even legacy. He's curating now. His life has become a kind of private gallery. Each move, each word, each silence hung like an exhibit. Only a few are allowed to tour. The war is over, the wounds are buried, and the city has changed underneath his shoes. But Joey hasn't disappeared. He's become selective, and in this business, that's even more dangerous. The Colombo family keeps their distance now. No active threats, no sudden flare-ups, just a shared understanding. Don't poke the artist. That's what they call him now, behind closed doors. Not Crazy Joey, not the upstart, just the artist. And everyone knows what that means. He still has friends in strange places. Judges who owe him silence. Cops who owe him distance. Union men who send fruit baskets at Christmas. And his crew, though leaner, tighter, still orbits him like planets around something uncomfortably magnetic. Mackie still handles business. Quietly, cleanly. A poker room here, a vending route there. Real estate moves disguised as spiritual retreats. Kid Blast? He's the same, but not. More cautious, more calculated, less rage, more gravity. And Joey? He has stopped asking who's watching. He knows. He begins hosting dinners. Not business meetings, actual dinners. 9 chairs, candlelight, jazz on vinyl, handwritten menus with lines of poetry under each dish. The guests are a mix. Lawyers, ex-cons, sculptors, philosophers, a retired boxer who never took a dive. At one dinner, Carla catches him just staring, not at the food, not at the guests. At the moment, she asks what he's thinking. Joey says, "I built a museum out of fire escapes, and now I'm trying to teach the paintings how to breathe." She doesn't respond, just leans in and kisses him once, lightly. He doesn't blink. Many people still think Joey Gallo lost his edge, but others say he was learning how to walk without dragging a knife behind him. So what do you think? Did he go soft Or did he finally grow sharp enough to stop needing a blade? That spring, Joey begins writing again. Not sketches, not fragments. Letters to old enemies, to ghosts, to himself. He keeps them in a box labeled unsent. One letter, dated April 19th, reads, "Dear stranger, if you ever build a world where loyalty doesn't require pain, I'd like to live there. Until then, I'll keep folding napkins into escape plans. Meanwhile, the city keeps changing. The old cafes close. New music fills the air. Fuzzier, louder. Young men wear different suits, if they wear them at all. The word mafia becomes less elegant in print, more cartoonish." Joey notices and adapts. He changes the way he walks, the way he dresses, the way he greets people, always 3 seconds ahead of the time trying to swallow him. Then one afternoon he visits a bookstore in the village, finds a dusty copy of Leaves of Grass. Inside the cover, someone's written, "To whoever understands, keep going." He buys it, reads it in the park, leaves it on a bench, walks away. Carla begins talking about Paris. She's been offered a short residency, photography, wants to go, wants him to come. Joey doesn't say no, but he doesn't say yes. He just says, "I need to leave something behind that can walk without me." She nods, then says, "Then teach it fast." One night, in bed, she asks, "What are you most afraid of?" He replies, "Being misquoted after I'm gone." They both laugh, but only once. By summer, Joey opens an art space. Not a gallery, a space. No sign, no hours. Just a door in a warehouse near the water. Inside, paintings by convicts, sculptures made of rusted metal. A poem projected onto a bare wall that changes weekly. Nobody knows he runs it. Nobody has to. That's the point. Kid Blast visits one night, looks around, says nothing, finally asks, "What is all this?" Joey replies, "Proof." Albert asks, "Of what?" Joey lights a cigarette, blows smoke toward the ceiling. "Of everything I couldn't say with bullets." That September, a man from the past returns, an old rival, one who was supposed to be dead. He's clean now, married, owns a hardware store in Yonkers, wants to bury the past. Joey invites him to dinner. They sit, drink wine, talk about childhood. At the end, Joey says, "I hope your silence is honest." The man nods. Joey adds, "Because mine always is. No threats, just toast." Afterward, Joey walks home alone, passes a broken window, stares at his reflection. It's blurrier now, older, but still sharp where it counts. He reaches into his coat pocket, finds a folded sketch, unfolds it. A lion, sitting on a throne made of subway rails, wearing glasses, smiling. He folds it again, pockets it, keeps walking, because Joey Gallo is not done yet. He's just pacing. And the city, still listening, still waiting, still not sure if it's seen his final trick. It's early 1968, and New York City is breaking into new shapes. Civil unrest, music and rebellion, suits with wider collars, louder buttons. The skyline's the same, but the heartbeat beneath it, quicker, hungrier, restless. Joey Gallo fits it like a tailored glove. He's not outdated, not stuck. He's just tuned differently now. The streets, they still speak his name, but in a lower register. Less shouted, more murmured, less feared, more revered. He's not a threat anymore. He's a reference. The Gallows Crew now runs smoother than ever. Each man operates with muscle memory. Their crimes aren't the kind you notice right away. They don't make noise in the street. They happen in margin space, bookkeeping, city permits, backdoor deals written in conditional verbs. Even the cops admit, Joey's world is cleaner now. Cleaner but not innocent, just surgical. Joey's suits are simpler, his voice steadier. He shaves with cold water and quotes Camus before breakfast. Carla says he's becoming an elegant contradiction. He replies, better than a messy imitation. She's packing for Paris now. Ticket booked. He hasn't told her if he's going. She doesn't ask anymore. Because the kind of love they have, it's not waiting. It's weathering. Then one day Joey does something unexpected. He goes to the movies, alone. Downtown cinema, foreign film, French, subtitled Quiet. He watches the whole thing without popcorn, without blinking, walks out into the cold, and says to no one, I like the way it ended. No resolution, just drifting. That same night, he writes something in his notebook. I think I built a life that can only be understood in the past tense. The crew notices he's been distant, not absent, just elevated. Kid Blast especially. Albert corners him after a meeting. You retiring? Joey lights a cigarette. Not yet, Albert presses. Then what are we building now? Joey exhales. An aftertaste. Many people still think Joey Gallo couldn't stay away from the game. But others say he never truly played. Not the way they thought. So what do you think? Was he addicted to power, or to proving the rules were optional? There's a new kid in the crew. 19. Eager. Quick with a knife. Quicker with questions. He asks Joey one day, if you had to start over, would you do this again? Joey laughs, then says, I'd draw better maps and bring more erasers. The kid doesn't understand, but years later, he will. Joey begins organizing something he calls the archive. Not for the feds, not for the legacy, just for himself. Stacks of old letters, photos never printed, meanness from dinners long gone, even cassette tapes, recordings of city sounds, footsteps, jazz drifting through windows, rain on cab roofs. He says, this is what history feels like before it knows its history. He files it all in a hidden room behind a tailor's shop, labels the boxes with single words, noise, proof, almost. One of those boxes contains a sketch, a barber with blood on his apron. It's not labeled, but Joey knows what it means. So does Carla. So do we. Then comes the invitation, a quiet one, from a publisher, not a big name but ambitious. They've seen his essays. They've heard rumors. They want to publish his memoir. Joey listens, smiles, sips his coffee, then asks, will it read like a confession or a lullaby? The editor says, whichever sells better. Joey laughs. He doesn't say no, but he doesn't say yes either. The Colombo family starts sniffing again, not violently, but politely. They ask where Joey stands, what he wants, what he's building. He replies, I'm not climbing. I'm making my way down with grace. They don't understand, but they take it as peace, which is enough for now. That spring, Carla leaves for Paris. No tears, no speech, just a long hug, a kiss that says, I know you'll stay, even if you go. She boards the plane. Joey watches until it disappears into a sky full of unanswered questions. He returns to Brooklyn. The city looks the same, but something inside him, tilted, not broken, just rearranged. One evening, in a smoky club, he writes something on a napkin and folds it into his coat pocket. He never tells anyone what it says, but decades later, when they open his archives, they'll find it, still folded, still clean, and written in that steady, slanted hand. I lived like punctuation, a comma when they expected a period, a question mark where silence should be, and still, they read me anyway. Joey Gallo walks home under a rusted awning, past lamplight and brick. He doesn't look back. He never does, because memory always follows. And Joey? He walks forward, because that's the only direction the myth allows. Brooklyn, 1969. The city moves differently now, quicker, bolder, louder in some corners, and quieter in others. Fashion has changed. The language has too. Even the way people look at power has shifted. You don't command with fear anymore. You do it with nuance, with presence, with absence, and that's where Joey Gallo lives now, in the negative space, in the silence that makes people uneasy, in the gap between what used to happen and what still could. He's still here, still sharp, still unsettling, but less present in the traditional sense. You won't find him sitting at the corner booth every Tuesday. You won't hear his voice echoing down Court Street. You won't see his name etched into fresh concrete like the boys coming up now seem to love, because Joey doesn't need to prove he exists. His existence is a given. He spends his mornings walking the piers, paper cup of black coffee, no hat, just cold wind and fog and gulls crying like something ancient. Occasionally he stops, scribbles a thought on the back of a receipt. Once, Mackie finds one of those slips of paper and reads, legacy isn't what they remember. It's what they blame you for when you're no longer useful. Mackie says nothing, just folds it into his wallet and keeps it like a relic. The Gallo Crew? Still functional, still feared, but evolving. They're deeper in unions now. Dock work, electricians, even the fringe of sanitation. No violence, just leverage. And that's Joey's lesson. Violence is loud. Leverage is generational. He tells Kid Blast, break a leg, they fear you. Fix a permit, they need you. Albert still prefers the first option, but he listens, because Joey's never steered them wrong. Not yet. One evening, at a late-night diner in Gravesend, Joey meets with a playwright. She's young, ambitious, working on a script about morality and myth. She wants to interview him. He agrees, but sets rules. No recordings, he says. And I get to veto the ending. She laughs. He doesn't. They meet 3 times. At the third, she hands him a line she's written for his character. He walked like guilt was a tailored suit, and he wore it well. Joey reads it, nods, then says, make it corduroy, guilt should itch. Carla writes from Paris, long, meandering letters, descriptions of streetlight on cobblestone, a gallery exhibit of nothing but torn canvas, a man who plays saxophone into a wine bottle to hear it hum. Joey replies less often, but when he does, his letters are meticulous, typed on a machine that sometimes skips the letter E and always signed with still folding lions. One night, Joey finds himself alone at a chess park in Washington Square. Rain glistens on the concrete. All the tables are empty, except one, a homeless man playing both sides. Joey sits across from him, says nothing. They play. The man loses. Joey nods once, leaves his coat on the back of the chair, walks into the rain without it. Many people still think Joey was fading by this point, but others believe he was just shedding, burning off everything that didn't belong in the final version of himself. So what do you think? Was this decline or distillation? A rumor starts circulating that Joey's writing a book, a real one. Not poetry, not fragments, but a full memoir, a code book, a confessional, something. No one's seen it, but people swear it exists. A cab driver says he picked Joey up holding a leather-bound draft. A waitress says he left behind a marked-up manuscript. A kid from Red Hook says he saw Joey drop pages into a mailbox labeled, "To the Future." None of it's confirmed. But that's the thing with myths. They don't need evidence, just momentum. Then, one Tuesday in October, Joey disappears for 4 days. No contact, no sightings. Even Kid Blast gets nervous. When he finally returns, he walks into the back room of a flower shop the crew uses for meetings, drops a shoebox on the table and says, "Put this somewhere fireproof." Inside, dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled with a year, a name, a place. The crew doesn't ask, but Mackie starts building a safe in the basement the next day. Joey begins hosting midnight walks, unscheduled, word of mouth only. He picks a street, a direction, a mood. A small group follows. Writers, boxers, ex-cons, a priest. They walk, they listen. Sometimes Joey speaks, sometimes he doesn't. One night someone asks, "Why do we do this?" Joey says, "Because no one's listening when we sit down." It becomes a ritual. It becomes legend. By December, the wind sharpens. The nights stretch longer. Brooklyn seems to inhale and not exhale. Joey walks into a bookstore, leaves behind a folded napkin between pages of The Godfather. Scrawled on it, "I'm not him. He's just the ghost they wrote after I left." No one sees him leave, but they find the napkin. They frame it. They hang it above the register. It's still there today. Because Joey Gallo has become more than memory. He's a lesson, a warning, a sonnet in a gun holster. And though the street no longer bows when he passes, it listens. Because some ghosts don't rattle chains. They hum lullabies and walk in shoes no one can fill. The first days of 1970 come in gray. Cold fog presses low over the city like a slow exhale from a tired giant. Fire escapes collect frost. Park benches turn to sculpture. The East River moves like it's thinking too hard. And Joey Gallo? He just keeps walking. Never hurried, never paused. Just that same pace. A rhythm made of decisions no one else heard being made. In the winter months, the Gallo name rarely appears in headlines, but it echoes. City council decisions shift by half a vote. Nightclubs mysteriously pass inspections. Unions lean left or right depending on who Joey had coffee with that week. He isn't climbing anymore. He's pulling levers, quiet ones, and it unnerves everyone. One afternoon, Kid Blast finds Joey standing in front of a broken payphone, dialing with no coin. Albert asks, "Who you calling?" Joey smiles without looking. "Someone I owe silence to." He never explains. Albert never asks again. The Gallo Crew tightens, not from threat, but from design. Joey's been pruning. Shrinking operations that draw heat. Folding businesses into each other like origami. Corner store becomes a publishing press, becomes a shell nonprofit, becomes nothing you can subpoena with a straight face. Even Mackie says, "You're disappearing on purpose." Joey replies, "I'm writing myself into a footnote." Carla sends a letter from Paris on pale blue paper. She includes a photo of a bookstore with crooked walls and poetry taped to the ceiling. On the back, she writes, "Everything here is beautiful and slightly broken. Reminds me of you." He keeps it in his breast pocket for weeks. One night, he meets with a jazz musician. Famous, tired, brilliant. They sit in a booth, drinking whiskey with 2 straws like kids. The musician says, "You got enemies?" Joey nods. The man asks, "You play music for them?" Joey says, "No. I let them hear the silence after the music ends." They laugh, quietly. A new cop comes sniffing around the crew. Young, sharp, fresh from a desk where idealism still smells like aftershave. He shadows Gallows' steps for 3 weeks. Joey finally confronts him, invites him for coffee. They sit. No lawyers, no threats. Joey says, "If you're going to follow me, you should at least know what I taste like when I lie." The cop says nothing. 3 days later, he's transferred. Many people still believe the government had files thicker than a Bible on Joey Gallo, but others argue they never understood how to frame a ghost. So what do you think? Was he above the law, or just underneath its radar, smiling? The publisher comes back. They want the memoir. They offer money, a title, even a ghostwriter. Joey declines all of it. He writes his own version, by hand. 1 copy, locked in a safe. No one reads it, yet. Meanwhile, Joey's archive grows. Tapes, sketches, matchbooks from forgotten bars, even a shoelace from the day his father died. Each object labeled not with dates, but with verbs. Waited, left, betrayed, forgave. He tells Kid Blast, "If I go missing, burn the box labeled maybe." Albert nods but asks nothing, because Joey's requests come wrapped in riddles that bite if opened too quickly. That spring something shifts. He begins hosting dinners again, but this time different guests. A city planner, a nun, a retired mobster who paints still life now. They eat soup and talk about absence like it's a character in the room. Someone says, "You've changed." Joey says, "I've remembered more than I've become." No one questions it. Then comes the call. Not from Carla, not from family, from a man with no name, voice like gravel in a velvet sack. Wants Joey to consult on a film. Mob stuff, stylized, New Hollywood. Joey declines, but offers one note. Make sure the villain whispers more than he yells. They use it. That summer, Joey visits the Museum of Modern Art. He stands in front of a blank white canvas, an actual exhibit. Title, "Nothing, but honestly." He stares at it for 13 minutes, then says aloud, "Finally, someone painted what I've been thinking." No one laughs, except him. The crew notices he's been smiling more, but also sleeping less. Joey shrugs it off, says he's just tuning out noise with better noise. Then one night, under a moon sharp enough to shave with, Joey climbs to the roof of his building. No reason. Just up. He sits, lights a cigarette, watches the city flicker like a nervous confession, and whispers, "If no one writes your ending, write it in smoke." Below him, Brooklyn hums, not loud, but steady, because Joey Gallo might be slowing. But the legend's just getting warmed up. It's 1971, and the air in Brooklyn carries a different weight. Thicker with history, sweeter with hindsight, heavier with the things left unsaid. Buildings stand taller, not from bricks, but from what's been hidden inside them. Joey Gallo walks among them like a man who's already been carved into their foundations. He's not planning anymore. He's polishing. By now, Joey's routines are elegant to the point of suspicion. Every Thursday, he walks the same 4 blocks, picks up the same newspaper, waves at the same doorman, pauses to tie his shoe in front of the same fire hydrant. Not superstition, surveillance management. He once told Mackie, if you give them a pattern, they stop searching for meaning. It works. No one knows what he's actually doing, which means he's doing it right. Carla sends a telegram. Not a letter, a telegram. 3 words. You still folding? Joey smiles, tapes it above his desk, then folds a piece of blank paper into the shape of a city skyline, puts it in an envelope. No return address, just sends it. The Gallo Crew runs smooth as lacquered wood. No cracks, no splinters, just a subtle shine that tells you don't touch unless invited. They've carved out influence in the strangest places now. Art grants, zoning boards, even a literary magazine that prints critiques of government ethics under the title Fictionalized. Mackie jokes, we're funding poetry. Joey replies, it's laundering for the soul. Then in March, Joey visits his mother's grave. Alone, he kneels, rests 2 fingers on the stone and whispers, still trying to be the quiet you raised me for. A gust of wind knocks over nearby flowers. Joey doesn't move. He just straightens the vase again, then leaves. Many people still believe Joey was retreating from the life, but others say he was planting something deeper than turf wars and loan sharking. So what do you think? Was he fading or fermenting? One night he hosts what the crew calls the last dinner. 8 guests, 1 violinist, no phones, each plate served with a handwritten quote under the napkin. Joey doesn't speak until dessert. Then he stands, glass raised, and says, tonight is not a goodbye. It's a punctuation mark. You decide which one. They toast. The room goes quiet. A kind of reverent silence that sticks to the walls. Later that week, Joey's sketchbook is found on a park bench. Inside, a drawing of a man holding a bird cage full of keys. A poem that ends with, even shadows want to be held. A single line scribbled in red ink. I am no longer angry, just unfinished. The city buzzes with rumors. No one knows if it's a message, or a decoy, or both. Joey takes to walking the Brooklyn Bridge at night, always east to west, always alone. He stops midway, leans on the railing, stares down at the water like it's telling him something only he can hear. A young cop once tried to ask him what he was doing there so late. Joey responded, checking on the weight of things, and kept walking. Kid Blast grows quieter too, not afraid, just respectful. He senses something, like a curtain slowly being pulled, revealing not an ending, but a choice. One day, a writer approaches Joey outside a cafe, says, "You're a legend." Joey nods, then replies, "So was Pompeii. Look how that turned out." The archive grows one final time, this time not in paper or tape, but voice. Joey rents a small studio, nothing fancy, just soundproof walls and a microphone, and begins speaking, not to anyone in particular, just out loud. Stories, half-truths, confessions, lullabies made of memory. He doesn't label the tapes, just numbers them, and locks them away. Then, in late November, he gives Kid Blast a box. Plain, wooden, unmarked. Inside, one photo of the crew from 1955, a cassette labeled, "Play When the Streets Forget Me," and a note. Not instructions, just an echo. Let it bounce as far as it needs to. I'll be where it lands. Many people still wonder what Joey Gallo wanted in the end. A clean legacy? A louder myth? Or just a quiet moment that no one could interrupt? So what do you think? Was he drawing a map? Or finally folding the last page? December arrives, with snow, with silence, with the kind of stillness that feels earned. Joey walks past old storefronts that once mattered. Some are closed. Some have been reborn as coffee shops and yoga studios. He doesn't judge. He just whispers. Everything reincarnates. Even danger. Then he disappears into the crowd, still visible, but only if you're looking the right way. Because by now, Joey Gallo is not just a man. He's a rhythm, a philosophy, a pause between gunshots, a smile too sharp to be sentimental. And Brooklyn, it still remembers, not because it has to, but because forgetting him would be louder than keeping the silence. The winter of 72 doesn't creep in. It lands with full boots and foggy breath, frosting windows and silencing street chatter in Brooklyn. But Joey Gallo walks through it like a man who knows the cold by name. It doesn't bite him. It remembers him. And it keeps its distance. He wears a long black overcoat, one button always left undone, as if the wind should be allowed in on the conversation. By now, people speak his name differently. Not with fear, not even with awe. With a sort of reverent confusion, like they've read the ending of a book that didn't tie its laces. Joey has stopped showing up to half the meetings, not out of disrespect, out of irrelevance. The crew runs fine without him in the room, because every decision they make still feels like it echoes his voice. Mackie calls it phantom governance. Halbert prefers drift leadership. Joey doesn't offer a term, just a wink and call it ambient. He starts frequenting a library in Fort Greene, not for the books, for the chairs, soft ones. He says the silence there isn't passive, it's curated. One librarian, a retired dancer, recognizes him. She doesn't tell anyone. Instead, she leaves him obscure poetry on the reading table each Thursday. One week, he reads a line scrawled in the margin. Not every man wants a kingdom. Some want the hour before sunrise, uninterrupted. He folds the page and places it into his coat pocket like a prayer. Carla writes again, this time from Madrid. She's seen a painting that reminds her of him. Blue and black and gold. A man holding a mirror with no reflection. She includes a Polaroid and a note. You still folding even in shadow? Joey sends back no words. Just a torn piece of brown paper. One word in fountain pen ink. Always. The Gallo archive is almost complete now. The boxes are stacked. The tapes are labeled. Some in languages no one in the crew speaks. There's even a section titled, What I Didn't Do. Kid Blast reads the labels one evening and says, "This isn't a legacy, it's a puzzle." Joey replies, "No, it's an alibi for when memory testifies." Then, a strange thing happens. Joey is invited to a college as a guest speaker. The course is Modern Ethics in Crime and Culture. He laughs when he reads the letter. Then he goes, wears a dark blazer, no tie, smells like pine smoke and pencil shavings. The students expect bravado. They get precision. He opens with, "I am not a good man, but I have done very few things by accident." Someone asks if he regrets anything. Joey pauses, then says, "Regret is the sound you hear when memory turns polite." The professor claps. One student cries. Another records the whole thing on a hidden tape recorder. That tape? It resurfaces years later in an art installation titled Voice of the Vanished. Around this time, Joey begins drawing. Nothing grand, just line work. Faces with no features, hands gripping nothing, doorways drawn from the wrong side. He leaves them on benches, in buses, tucked into newspapers. People start calling them gallographs. Collectors pay cash for the originals. Joey laughs, then starts signing them with a single lowercase g. Many people still say Joey was slipping into obscurity, but others argue he was building a version of himself that could only exist in obscurity. So what do you think? Was he hiding? Or finally revealing his truest shape? One quiet night, Kid Blast asks him directly, "Are you leaving?" Joey doesn't answer right away. Then finally, "Not leaving, just thinning." "Thinning?" Joey nods. Think fog. Think myth. Think pages left intentionally blank. Albert shakes his head. "You always did hate exits." Joey smiles. "Only the loud ones." Then a news story. Small column. Local paper. Reclusive Brooklyn figure donates unnamed archive to public collection. The photo is blurry. But if you squint, there's that overcoat. And a smile too tired to be fake. Joey Gallo begins giving things away. Not money. Not possessions. Moments. Time. He helps a kid fix a flat tire without introducing himself. He pays for a veteran's groceries and vanishes before the receipt prints. He plays chess with a man who doesn't speak English, loses, and bows like it mattered. One night, walking past a deli that used to be a dry cleaner that used to be a tailor's, Joey stops, looks in the window, smiles, and says softly, "Everything's borrowed, even the brickwork." That week, he writes one final line in a notebook. "If they ever ask where I went, tell them I stayed." Just not all in one place. Brooklyn breathes slower these days, not because it's tired, because it's listening. listening for the footsteps that no longer echo the same way. The ones that once said, "I'm coming." Now they whisper, "I've been." April 1972. Joey Gallo's name surfaces again, but not from a police blotter, nor from whispers in a back room. This time it's on a dinner reservation. Umberto's Clam House, Mulberry Street, Little Italy. Not quite a message, but not exactly nothing either. He chooses the spot. Public, familiar. Italian seafood and cheap white wine. A place that sings Sinatra too early and closes too late. A place where ghosts hang out in the corners, sipping espresso, judging the living for forgetting their lines. Joey isn't hiding. He's showing up, clean-shaven, pressed shirt. That coat again, creased at the elbows from too much living. He walks into Umberto's like it's any other Thursday, except it's not. It's his birthday, April 7th, 43. Still folding, still walking, still untouchable, or so it seemed. Carla never wrote that month. Maybe she felt something. Or maybe she was waiting for silence to say what words couldn't. Joey sits with a small group. A friend. A bodyguard. A quiet man from the theater scene who likes to talk about stage lighting like it's a religion. They eat linguine with clam sauce. Joey's smiling. He raises a glass and says, "To the pauses between the noise." They clink. The moment hangs in the air like incense. And then, gunfire. Sharp, close, ugly, like someone ripping through paper dreams with a kitchen knife. Joey's hit, slumps sideways, eyes open, mouth parted like he's about to offer one last joke. But the punchline's stolen. Panic, screams, people running. The shooters disappear into the night like spilled ink across a silk map. Kid Blast isn't there. Neither is Mackie. Joey bleeds onto a white tablecloth. His blood traces out into something curved. A question mark, maybe. Or a comma. Many people still argue over who ordered the hit. Rival mobsters? The commission? Old scores dressed in new coats? Some say Joey poked one too many sleeping bears. Others say he didn't poke at all. He just existed too brightly for a world built on dim corners. So what do you think? Was it vengeance, justice, or just a page turning too fast? He doesn't die right away. The ambulance comes. Paramedics work. There's shouting, lights, motion. But Joey? Joey's still, even now, one hand on his chest, one fist curled like it's holding the answer to a riddle no one else got. They pronounce him dead at Beekman Downtown Hospital, April 7th, 1972, exactly 43. Brooklyn doesn't mourn loud. It whispers. It rewinds. The next morning, the crew gathers. No suits, no flowers, just presents. Kid Blast says nothing, just places a folded crane on the table. No one speaks for a long time. Finally, Mackie breaks the silence, reads a line from one of Joey's old notebooks. "When I go, don't make a statue. Make a pause. Let the quiet speak for me." So they do. They don't retaliate. They don't write tributes. They walk slower, speak less, and carry the echo. Carla doesn't come to the funeral, but she sends a package. Inside, a blank postcard, a ribbon from an art show in Madrid, and a folded note. "You were always the exhale. I was just the breath before." The archive is sealed, not hidden, just placed somewhere deep, in a room with no name. Only a smell, cedarwood, old paper, and iron. Inside, a tape labeled simply, "Play when it gets quiet." No one's played it yet. Joey's grave is modest. No titles, no aliases. Just Joseph Gallo, 1929, 1972. He laughed in the quiet. And sometimes, if you visit late enough, the wind through the grass sounds like a page turning. Brooklyn adjusts. Stores change hands. Crews rise and fall. But the shape of things, the weight of the silence in certain corners, the rhythm of footfalls near Carroll Street, still hums with a signature. People talk. Some say Joey's ghost walks the bridge. Others swear they saw him in Rome, holding a cafe menu upside down. But most just remember. And remember softly. Because legends like his don't demand loud. They demand stillness. And Joey, wherever he is now, he's folding lions. Still, time, as it always does, keeps walking even after everyone else stops. The city shifts. Streets get renamed. New men with hard eyes and lighter tempers try to fill chairs that were never meant for comfort. Joey Gallo's name is carved into fewer lips, but those who still speak it like a lullaby that once bit back. And the story? It doesn't end. It just settles. Kid Blast runs quiet now. He keeps the crew low, calm and cash flowing. Less flash, more focus. His orders carry the scent of a ghost behind them. Joey's logic folded into every instruction. No one questions him. They don't have to. He doesn't speak of that night at Umberto's. Doesn't replay it. Doesn't let it shape him. He only says once to Mackie, "Joey taught us that a man can vanish and still be louder than a cannon." Mackie nods. They leave it at that. Carla eventually returns to New York. Not for closure. She doesn't believe in that. Just for a walk. She strolls past old cafes, bookshops turned vape stores, and bakeries now selling Wi-Fi with their bread. At the Brooklyn Bridge, she stops mid-span, pulls out a folded letter never sent. In it, just this line, "You folded paper like it was armor. I loved you for the spaces between the creases." She lets it fall into the wind, not dramatic, just deliberate. The Gallo archive is eventually donated, anonymously, to a university no one can quite verify. It's cataloged in fragments. Some tapes are blank, others full of coded poetry or long pauses broken by the sound of Joey lighting a match. The scholars debate its meaning. Was it art? Was it evidence? Or was it just Joey talking to the walls, like he always did when the city wouldn't answer back? So what do you think? Was he documenting? Or daring someone to misread him? The myth of Joey Gallo becomes performance art. A graffiti stencil shows up in Harlem. Joey in a trench coat, holding a paper crane instead of a gun. A gallery in Soho hosts a night called Folding Lions. No explanation. At a poetry slam, a young woman reads a piece that ends. He didn't disappear. He just picked a quieter font. The room goes silent, then erupts. Years later, a novelist claims to have met him in Istanbul. Says he sold secondhand books, spoke 5 languages, and told her, "I once played chess with a man who cried every time he won." She asked his name. He smiled, winked, and said, "Does it matter?" And maybe that's the point. Joey Gallo didn't belong to the ending. He belonged to the space between stories. The fold where meaning bends, where truth becomes poetry, and silence becomes permission. He was Brooklyn's whisper, a philosopher in a pinstripe, a rebel who rewrote the script by refusing to shout. And if you stand still long enough at just the right hour, the wind still carries his voice, low, measured, with that crooked smile tucked into every syllable. Because legends like Joey don't fade. They fold, neatly, intentionally, and leave behind a shape no one can quite flatten. So now, with the last lines folded and the final echoes fading, let's take a breath, not the kind you force, the kind that just arrives, soft and heavy, like dust settling after a storm no one warned you about. Joey Gallo's story isn't just crime or chaos or charisma. It's the gentle unraveling of a man who wore myth like a coat and silence like armor. The kind of man whose absence leaves more weight than his presence ever needed to. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine those streets again. The clack of leather shoes on wet pavement. Neon signs humming above corner diners. A paper crane on a table no one dared clear. Let it all soften. Let the city dim. Let Joey's last steps walk just a little longer in your mind. Because maybe, just maybe, what he left behind wasn't power or fear or memory. Maybe it was permission to be quiet, to be deliberate, to be unfinished and proud of it. So wherever you are right now, bedroom, couch, headphones on beneath a ceiling fan, feel free to let the weight ease off your shoulders. You've made it. And maybe Joey's out there somewhere, still walking, still folding, still humming that tune no one quite recognizes. But tonight, he's paused, and so should you. Sweet dreams, friend.